I did go ahead and listen to at least the first half of the episode you guys did in my absence last week. And thank you, Flirt, for flying in and saving the day, getting an episode out there while I was gallivanting in Uranus, Missouri for a military graduation, which had a fudge factory, which I was very excited for. I was big on, like, I'd seen the merch online somewhere of Uranus Fudge Factory and was like, oh, there's some great ironic Uranus t-shirts. Like, for example, I got Uranus Plumbing Company, laying quality pipe in your Uranus since 19 whatever.
Wow.
A lot of fun stuff like that. And on the way there, I realized, wait a minute, the little TikTok I had seen was not in Missouri, it was in Iowa. So I think what I also discovered this past weekend is that if you live in a hometown that is named Uranus, you just open up a fudge factory because you have free marketing. It's right there.
You have to. It's built in. Like anything, if you don't, it's just being irresponsible with the opportunities that life gives you.
Yeah, you play the hand you're dealt, and when you get pocket aces, you start a fudge factory, you know?
Yeah, no choice. No choice.
Back to listening to you guys. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate you stepping in. But I did want to take a moment here to open up and to scold you guys on your deep state buy-ins, your propaganda swallowing narratives as you guys come on here and I even give once we say something terrible about this guy, we'll give Logan credit. It's his spirit in the podcast. And nobody made it to Eyebrow Gate. I guess, to be fair, he was not yet captured when you guys were on there. But the alleged capturing of the CEO assassin, I'm sure you guys are already aware of what I'm talking about when I say Eyebrow Gate.
Well, look, man, he was still freshly out of the hostel that morning. All we had was footages of him, like, freshly shaved. We didn't know he was a swarthy Southern Italian, but, you know, when you let one of those people be a fugitive for 5 days, those hairy little caterpillars are going to grow out and start crawling across his face, trying to mate and connect. He's getting very close, man.
Yeah, I do like that nobody made that connection that, like, hey, have you ever just seen an Italian guy not shave for a couple days? Those eyebrows are going to lose a little bit of the gap.
Look, it's not the same guy.
Possibly be. Well, I guess that's where we'll start today. Do you guys have any misgivings about this gentleman? Do you think that this is in fact the killer, or do you think that we might have a little case of cover-up? Is it a little too convenient that we found this man with the duffel bag, with the manifesto, with the murder weapon sitting in a McDonald's just a state away?
Go ahead, man. I'll let you go first.
I'm going to be very short and brief here. I 100% unironically believe everything the authorities have told us, and I believe they caught the right guy. So I'm going to let y'all go and take the floor here, and I'll maybe push back later on. But for now, I think it's him.
Yeah, I don't have any I have no conspiracies about this one. I think that I think there's a lot of mirrors being put up that are showing very interesting reflections about society and what certain groups think about the killing, authority, all of that good stuff. And I'm reminded, like in The Incredibles, where he's like, if everyone's super, nobody is. It's the same thing. It's like, if everything's a conspiracy, nothing is. And so I also don't think that there's much to the conspiracy about this is the wrong guy. It seems like, I don't know, probably I'm definitely not qualified to like give him like a psych profile, but it almost seemed like he expected to be caught and he wanted credit for it. Because I mean, if you're going to do something like that, I want credit. You know, it's like, as we were joking in our text thread, it'd be really hard if everybody's talking, oh, did you hear about that? And you get like positive praise in the Monday morning Zoom, not to be like, I'm the killer. It's like, it was me, guys. I did it.
What I would say if I was the killer, but I'm not. But like, it's pretty cool, right?
Right, it's pretty cool, yeah.
I heard he was like at least 6 feet tall.
I've never known any of my any of my Italian friends to hold any accomplishment they had in their life to themselves for more than half a minute. So
Yes.
Well, I mean, some boring answers by you guys, but I guess if y'all just want to mute for the next 45 minutes, I'll go ahead and get a couple of these.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Enlighten us, a great one. We need your guidance, Logan. Without you, the show is nothing. You're right. It's just a bunch of state-sponsored shilling coming from Flirtcheap and I.
Look,
yeah, when it's not me on the podcast,
police.
Whenever I don't make it to an episode, I just assume this is a late podcast. You know, this might as well be fucked or whatever that lady one is Kamala went on. No, I don't have any real deep as much as I want to jump in this, and obviously the internet is very much in my realm of entertainment, and that they're already all over this. I even saw it down to the number of the Pokemon in his profile.
Oh, the 268 conspiracy
Bible verse. Yeah, when you go to Psalms,
he was arrested exactly 268 miles away from the scene of the shooting.
Wait, what?
Yeah, everybody's playing the number 23 with everything they possibly can. That was one of them. Was the number of the Pokemon with a specific Bible verse and Psalms, I think, that I saw. But it's like, where'd you get Psalms from? Also, like, could it just be any book of the Bible?
They picked one book randomly.
They just found, they found one that had some quote of a rich guy. It wasn't even like, obviously the Bible verse wasn't like, "Thou shalt shoot the healthcare CEO who denied one's coverage."
That's in Exodus, right? He said, and Moses said, "Let my people free."
And Moses said, "How dare you deny my basic coverage for a pre-existing condition, you piece of shit."
As he shot Pharaoh in the back.
Then he parted the crowds at the Greyhound station and boarded a bus to Pennsylvania.
I'm pretty sure that's in Exodus.
And Moses said, "Pharaoh, when is your next health conference?" No, I only have one conspiracy theory here. I'm not even sure this is a conspiracy theory as much as a logical line of thinking. But you had this young prep school valedictorian, PhD, master's degree, handsome son of a bitch, well-traveled, came from family money. What else has he got going on? Also, obviously, just a handsome son of a bitch. Thirst trap pictures online. Gets a back injury. Cannot get the proper coverage because he's 26 years old and his family no longer has him on his insurance. Allegedly loses the ability to fuck right and becomes an incel for 1 year and immediately starts killing CEOs. I think that's the only logical conclusion we can come to in this.
It is. And for the one woman who is listening, you have an obligation then to have sex with every stranger who looks like they could possibly commit an act of violence, because within about 3 months, they're pulling the trigger. That's just the general rule.
Yeah, it's a cultural obligation that we've misconstrued with the misappropriation of our priorities in society today, where we have glorified our whores in the form of OnlyFans and pornographic modeling, to thinking they deserve the top 1% of men, when in reality, it was always an important social construct that whores fuck everyone, because eventually the ugly guys go insane,
Yeah, but me specifically, like, once they satisfy me, they can move on to other, like, less fortunate men around me. But, like, it's very important that, like, I am the center of this conspiracy. Like,
I'm writing manifesto tonight. Get that shaky CEO trigger finger going.
I have at least 10 manifestos written, and I'm just going to kind of pick one depending on, like, what the easiest target is. That way it's, like, politically on brand.
Just send one to each of my female friends and see which one is the best pussy magnet of all these manifestos.
Oh, absolutely. And, if we want to talk conspiracy theories, there's one that I do kind of, like, buy into. If there is ever the type of person to go and do ayahuasca and come away with, well, like, a very, very shitty conclusion from it, I kind of feel like this might have been it, especially there are people who, like, seek it out to solve problems. Like, if you're having some sort of crippling back injury that's changing the way that you view the world and is a problem that literally can't be solved with money. Like, there's no amount of money you can spend to fix, like, the issue he had in his lower spine.
You can get a crippling opiate addiction, though.
Yeah, there's at least that. You can try and numb the pain and then live through, what is it called? Tacky something tacky. Basically, like, your brain is like, oh shit, something's affecting my neurotransmitters. I better grow like 10,000 more. And so like you'll hear weird stories from people who are on heroin where they're like the shower feels like a million needles, because it literally is now, because like you blasted your sensory organs and you grew 10,000 more of them, and now you're extremely sensitive to everything. It's kind of fucking awful.
Yeah, if nothing else, Luigi for taking the more productive societal route.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough. Maybe this was more productive. But you know, when they interviewed like his friend was like taking a Zoom interview from Oaxaca, Mexico, which is one of those places you go to for an ayahuasca retreat. There's Oaxaca, there's Iquitos in Peru. There is one of these places up in the western side of the Andes in Peru in the mountains, where people do like San Pedro, like the cactus. And then there's a few that are like out in Arizona. There's certain cities that people say they're in or they're from. You kind of have to look at them with the side eye, because it's like there's not shit to do out there except ayahuasca, especially at your age. So I wonder if he maybe met some 60 Mesoamerican demons, and instead of making small changes in his life, he was like, yeah, I will go shoot the CEO. Thanks. This will fix everything.
Time to right all of these societal wrongs.
Conjured extra dimensional images of Will Ferrell screaming, "Kill the Malaysian Prime Minister." You must kill the Prime.
That's the one that I will buy into. But I like... I think one of the biggest problems. Oh, go for it.
I do like the image real quickly of the ayahuasca shaman, and like it's so associated with kind of this Native American, which obviously I guess is where it came from, specifically from the rainforest, but especially like in areas of Mexico or Arizona, especially, where like they aren't necessarily in these desertous areas, but they're just in an area that like tangentially gets associated with Native American heritage. And there's some dude named Steve who happens to be brown enough, who's like puts on the shaman headdress and becomes William Knife Man on the weekends to take tourists out to take ayahuasca. And he's like, oh, it's just some shit I do because I live in Flagstaff.
It is kind of wild, because it's a very weird cult of personality. Like there's some that you can go to and like the actual shamans are like, oh yeah, I'm 4th generation, blah, blah, blah. And they'll brown as shit. They don't speak English or Spanish. They speak some sort of like weird, whatever the actual local language is for that area. And then there's like a bunch you go to where it's just like 5 white dudes wearing like long flowy pants. And it's just, they happen to be in whichever area they found cheap property for like a 300-acre like retreat that they could build, which is sense. I think why they ended up in Oaxaca, for instance. So it's
one weird. Of those shops before that it was really important for your spiritual development that you come out and have an experience with ayahuasca, and I was like, I'm gonna find a different shop.
Why you bigot? What was wrong with him?
say it, Logan. Say
I just
it
don't
out
need
loud.
Malibu Barbie shaman is not what I'm looking for. I don't need middle-aged mom from the suburbs shaman experience. It's not the least spiritual leader I'm looking for personally.
And look, I think a bigger problem is there's like a lack of like shame. Like certain things should be in the closet. Like conspiracy theorists should be in the closet.
Yeah, gay. Oh, sorry.
Are you a faggot? Do you hate vagina? I'm sorry, that's totally out of context for the listeners. But like conspiracy theorists should be in the closet.
We scream at each other before shows so that we talk more butch when we're on here.
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually Logan's real voice earlier that you heard. But like ayahuasca should be in the closet. Like these experiences should be incredibly hard to find. They should be gate kept. They should have their own like insular communities. I think too many regular people are getting places they shouldn't be, and they don't belong. Like too many regular people are participating in conspiracy theories, and now you got to like sit here and listen to like the 286 nonsense where people are looking at their Pokédex and just picking something randomly out of a hat, or like people who like have never looked at faces for like long periods of time, or like looking at the bridge of his nose and like trying to tell you like, oh look, in this one CCTV footage it looks this way, and on this other high quality photo that's like straight on it looks this way. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like I don't know how to explain this to you in a way you're gonna understand. Like I want these things back in the closet. Like I want to be talking with like 3 experts in conspiracy theory who are like all unemployed or like garbage men somewhere in our little corner of the internet, where like they all make sense and they're kind of right, and I'm willing to follow this schizophrenia. And the same for the ayahuasca retreat. Like, you should be like fighting to get over there. When you get there, it's like 18 weirdos who've made it over there. You shouldn't be sitting with like, a software developer who thought he could take a week off and just, jet set and see if he could solve his problems with like a single drug session or something like that.
Fucked up. I can't read my keyboard anymore.
Bruh, for real, man. Some people get back, and that's what it's like, man. But it's like there are lines on Everest, and there are normies talking about conspiracy theories, and I like people don't understand the connection, but they're both bad things caused by like too much access.
Right.
We simply are too wealthy of a society. We have too many.
I'm gonna fight you on this one a little bit. I do think it's a healthy sign that conspiracies have become so mainstream and so sought after that we now have large numbers of grift channels that are just making up conspiracies about anything. It is annoying. I do not enjoy those channels. I think that muddies the water to a certain degree, and I think that is a bad microcosm of what is overall a good cultural shift, though. I think that it's really enlightening is not the right word. I think it's really encouraging for the future of us fighting against governmental propaganda in general, that there are just a bunch of people who freaked out looking for conspiracies.
That's
I think
totally
that the vast majority of people's IQs are too small to discern real conspiracies, and we'll continue to get a lot of dumb ones. But hopefully through the marketplace of free speech and good ideas, eventually everybody will realize that they should be listening to this podcast for their conspiracy theories.
That's a fair. I like where that idea goes, but I think that if you take it further in like the pendulum swinging of it, where it's like we only had one news source, you got you got all of your information from daddy government, and now we're starting to see all of these alternative medias pop up, which I think is a good thing. I think the pendulum swing, it's going to swing too far to where now nobody can agree on literally anything, and then it's going to lead to.
You guys listen to my news release last night?
Exactly.
Posting.
And then it's
Syria,
going to
weird, right?
What's that?
I said Syria, weird, right?
Huh? What about Syria? Yeah, and it's like, and it might be a good thing, but I also think that it could swing so far that when it finally swings back, that like now at a certain point, like people will. I think that it doesn't shock me to like imagine a future in which people yearn for some sort of like reliable, authoritative source of information, which only swings us back into like the hands of, a totalitarian information system. I think in the short term, it's good. I think in the long term, though, I could see it being a lot worse for us overall.
Hopefully it just goes the other way and it never goes back to corporate media, and it just goes to like, I don't know how deep into Warhammer 40K lore you guys are, but if Rogan can just become
Give me my oats,
we put him in a computer, but he can't do anything but interview people for podcasts for the rest of eternity.
So we Futurama him, and that's like his head is just like that's what you tune.
That's actually
you tune
a
into.
nicer way to do it, because the dystopian nightmare future I had in mind is more grotesque. But yeah, we could do that. We could put him in a fish bowl.
Fair enough.
I'll respond to this with one simple thought. When Nietzsche wrote God is Dead and was trying to describe the different forms of morality that existed within religion and why they were inferior, he didn't intend for people to become fedora atheists. There are some battles that you lose when you win, and I think this is definitely one that we lose when we win, because just generally, I don't think society is prepared to interact with free flow information without having someone there like actually saying like, don't think that, this isn't for you, we can't tell you this. And that's the sad truth, because like I don't want to live in that world, but like it is also like very necessary to like be fringes in certain things. And for instance, conspiracy theories, that's somewhere I always want to be in the fringe. If conspiracy theories become the main, I think they'll get retarded like they're retarded now. How many people fell for the fake manifesto? And it like was incredibly obviously fake. And I don't know if y'all ever saw it or not, but like it had all these weird details. So it was like passed around maybe 2 or 3 days ago. And everybody's like, oh, have you read the manifesto? And you look at it and it's like, oh, my mom had a crippling back injury and she couldn't get coverage. And like, it's all these like sobby details, $6,000 copay. She's screaming at night, and eventually he just gets numb and stops helping her because like there's nothing he can do. But then like you look at the details and compare it to his life, and it's like he grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, but supposedly his mom drove him to Monterey, California to see an aquarium while she had crippling back pain. It's like that's a 49-hour drive across America. Like, no, she didn't do that. And then like you look at the family and it's like, oh, they're 10% owners of like 1,000-acre golf course, resort, spa, as well as like one of the largest like sorry, not largest. It's a fairly large retirement home out there and on the East Coast. Like the family is loaded. Like there's an entire wing of the Greater Baltimore Medical Center that's named after the family because they did like a multi-million-dollar donation. And people are like, yeah, his mom couldn't afford a $6,000 copay on her back surgery.
Right.
And it's like, no, dude, that's not the real manifesto in any way, shape, or form. But like you're watching people just walk out and get one-shotted by like, you know, there's good misinformation where it's like, damn, I could believe that. That's fucking fire. And then there's just like, you know, they're not even trying. And I'm watching people like buy into shit where someone is not even trying with the misinformation. And like,
so you say not even trying, but it's almost like first one to the table because there are so many people who are ready to buy whatever they hear.
Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
You're there. You don't have to be good if you're first a lot of times.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think the Flirtcheap's point, like, because the second part of that quote is, "And who is to console us, O murderer of murderers?" And it's like you have killed him. And it's not, like Kiefer said, it's not supposed to be like, oh yeah, no, we're all fedora wearing atheists. It's like you've killed a very important part of society, and when the consequences come, they'll be like they're yours to bear and yours alone because you've murdered something very sacred and important to the functioning of your world. And when you do, there'll be nobody to console you for your murder because nobody can. And so I'm glad. See, this is why Flirtcheap and I are actually the superior intellects in this podcast. Logan's got his grifter conspiracy, but do we read Nietzsche, dude? We're smart.
Well, hold on, dude. I never finished any of his books.
I've actually never read a full Nietzsche book either. So they're
so hard. I'm a fucking idiot, dude.
No, for sure, dude. I'm a Luddite when it comes to that stuff. I could not.
Right? I'm not like 135 IQer who finishes tough books. Like I was sitting there with like Google open, like Googling words like every like 10th paragraph, and I was like, oh, I gotta go to bed. My brain hurts. I read one chapter.
There was a good long moment where I had Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time on my coffee table and never got deep enough into that book to claim I read it, but it stayed there to impress any girls that happened to come by my apartment for a couple years.
Bro, you're totally
just doing some light reading on the side, trying to
totally fucking up.
Trying to understand this whole
coffee table book by far. This is alpha for everybody listening. It's called The Book of Birthdays. And it's this book by this fucking palm reader who basically writes like a single page of information about like your entire personality for your birthday. Everybody who sits down at my coffee table, they cannot help but flip to their page and they're like, oh, look at what this says about me, like digging into it. Pussy opens at the palm of your hand as soon as they start reading.
I love that. Almost feels predatory at that point. You're of dumb liberal women.
Yeah, dude. You know, you get on the short bus and some people look at it as a hunting ground and other people look at it like, man, I got to care for these people. And I'm one of those two people. I'm not sure which.
There are two wolves inside Flirtcheap.
And maybe they're both predators. Read this book about what the stars say about our sexual capability.
Baby, what day were you born? Yo, no way. Yeah, that says a lot about you.
Oh shit, girl! This book says we ought to fuck right now.
Damn, bro, that's crazy. We're so compatible.
If any of my friends are listening, they're laughing really hard at this shit right fucking now.
Oh man, my Starbucks says you're gonna have the orgasm of a lifetime tonight. That's crazy.
You know, it's crazy. This book says like you have so much in store for you, but that you're gonna need someone born on a very specific day. It's actually my birthday. It's really wild. I mean, I can help you find a guy like that, but really, it might be too much work. It could just be us.
Do you go in there and do you like pre-edit it? Like, do you find out when her birthday is
Print out a new page for
and then
everybody.
like print out a new page to show that your birthday is like the compatible one?
No, every birthday says the exact same thing. It says the key to complete sexual gratification comes with the release of your inhibition.
As much as I enjoy the jokes, I gotta stop and be serious here because the dude who wrote this book, fucking fire, dude. Every single one of these pages is just hot fire. It's good. I could never.
He already knew it's
good. Yeah. Oh yeah.
He knew what this book was for.
I read the page about me, and I was just like, "Holy fuck, this is me." And like, I'm a skeptical dude. I got my misinformation defense up, but like, nah, I'm totally bought in on my page. 100%.
Is it the complete book of birthdays?
Let me look. I don't
or
know
is it the secret language of birthdays?
It might be the secret language of birthdays.
The secret sensual language of birthdays.
Yeah, Gary Goldschneider. This is the dude. This
Okay.
It's the secret language of birthdays. And it's personally, it's my favorite fucking book too. I even find myself sometimes like opening people's pages if I'm like annoyed at them for some reason. And I'm just looking into it. And I'm like, all right, let me try this shit. And I'll throw like a stupid meme at them based around the language of their page. It never works, but like I still have faith, dude. I fucking love
Stay toxic, baby. Stay toxic.
I swear to God, though, it's my favorite book.
I like.
All right,
book. That's
great. What's up. That's a nice little detour
we took. Right. We're not smart enough to read Nietzsche, so we couldn't actually finish the thought about it.
Right. It's just all we can say is that we're smart because we read it, and Logan's not because he doesn't. Oh yeah, about birthdays.
Without prompting or pushback, completely walk back everything you said about reading it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I can't.
Well, I read that quote on the poster once, so
I read it on like a motivational.
I'm not really a reading type of learner, more of an auditory learner. So to expect me to read said book would be, and I can't listen to it because French accents drive me insane. You know, they get me just.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was trying to decide, Baudrillard or Nietzsche, which one of these is like an airplane book for the audiobook, of course. And it was really Baudrillard. Made a lot more sense to me. And I totally look at the Matrix in a different way now.
There's like every pretentious philosophy major now, it's just they got this, if you look at through the lens of Sartre, it's like it radically changes the entire premise of the movie.
Look, one must imagine Sisyphus happy, and that's why I identify with Cypher. Put me back in the Matrix, baby.
Oh man.
Oh God.
And then they said, "Is there a doctor on the plane?" And I said, "Yes, but it's a doctorate of philosophy." And they threw me out. I couldn't get to my connecting flight.
Do you think that this stroke is actually what's holding you back, or do you think that perhaps your own inability to capture I'm running out of psychological terms.
That's fair.
If Mangione had gone to a philosophist instead of an ayahuasca retreat, things might have been totally different.
Or a palm reader or something like that. Yeah. Right. You never know. You never know what dude, I'm sure the bad ayahuasca or a bad trip on it would really shake you to your core. But I also
you gotta think too, that's something that has a lot of ingredients in it. Like ayahuasca is not specifically a plant. It's like a combination of plants along with a certain digestive inhibitor that allows you to ingest it rather than only smoke it, I think is the typical way you can get it in DMT form. Like I could see that being in something pretty easy for a makeshift shaman to mess up.
Yeah, and it's tough too because every retreat you go to is they have a different ingredient. It's like they're all making a cake, but some places you get pumpkin cake, some places you're getting strawberry cake, some places it's like a cheesecake, which I think is like kind of a weird, and some it's more traditional as far as dough. And then beyond that too, like there are places you go to where every mix is different. So if you show up in June, you get a different one than July. And some places will like keep a little bit and add it to like the next mix forever. And so you've got like just decades of fungi as well that's just been boiling in there. It's almost impossible to tell what you're going to get. So it's one of those things people think they can just show up and then, I'll land and go right back to work. You know, my PTO gives me 19 hours between my last session and my first day at the desk. I'll be fine. It's like
when he like goes back, must kill CEO.
Has anybody seen Mangione this morning? CEO.
Like, hey, why is everyone's face upside down on the Zoom meeting? Is my computer busted? What's going on?
This isn't funny, guys. This isn't a funny prank.
We here at the Malibu retreat like to add a little bit of rose water to our mix, which does add a nice light flavor to the palate. It also induces nightmare terrors, which is a bit of life's about trade-offs, and we think every experience is a good experience.
There are no such thing as bad trips here.
You know what's fucked up? If some discount places won't give you like enough information about what to do when you're done, because you can get weird reactions to food like a good like week or two afterwards. And so like too much sugar can like cause you to have like a what's the word for flashback? The drug flashback. I forget what it is. Like but basically you get right back into it.
I thought it was a flashback.
No, they have a different word for it. I forget now. I used to know it back when I was younger. But like, so certain types of bread can throw you off. And like, if they don't tell you that when you're leaving, you can go home and think you're being normal and you have like a hamburger for lunch at work. And then you're actually full on ayahuasca tripping for 45 minutes in the McDonald's drive-through and just out of touch with reality.
That's
and
rough.
obviously that stuff isn't really like as intense because it's like a short flashback for the most part. But
yeah, I'm sure you were thinking of. I tried to Google it and I came up with HPPD, or hallucinogen persisting perception disorder.
That is not what I'm talking about, but that's right. There's definitely another thing. That one can also cause flashbacks as well. But I think that's from people doing like acid repetitively for a long time, which is just kind of a silly thing to do. What do you call those?
I got trip residue, flash, retrip, or come up. None of those sound familiar to me either, but I do feel like I've also heard this term you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe it is just drug flashbacks. I don't know.
I just thought it was just flashback, but
maybe it is. I could have sworn there was a different word for this.
Maybe you had too many drug flashbacks and you can't remember the word anymore.
Right. That's why I have calming lights on the wall. You know, purple. It reminds me I'm at home. So if ever they change colors, I know I'm tripping.
They're green. I'm on acid again.
But we should get back to the topic, though.
That's fair.
So like, obviously, we're talking about conspiracy theories and like why he did it. I mean, both myself and Matt seem to be of the belief that they caught the right guy. There've certainly been like a lot of people talking that like, oh, this is a patsy. They've set him up, or he was like Project Mockingbirded or MK Ultra'd into doing this. And like, I don't really like have any specific thoughts about that because I don't really think that's the case. But I wonder, Logan, if you have any thoughts on those, or if there's any conspiracy you've read that you found like interesting or intriguing. Whether you agree with it.
Harvey Mangione over here. No, I did at first. I kind of bought into a little bit of the like, well, how suspicious this is that he was found with all of the murder weapon and the manifesto and the this and that, and I do think it was a little odd that everything was there with him, but I also didn't buy it when there was a little run of like clearly this was a professional assassination. Like I didn't really get the feeling from the video that was a unbelievably professional practitioner. It seems like there would be better ways to take a guy out if he didn't want to get caught than in the middle of the street in New York City,
right,
with one of the more well surveilled cities in the world. He's also obviously traveling, so you know what's his capability to get rid of this stuff. There's a lot of things I would think would be smarter ways to ditch it, you know, get rid of all this equipment. I think y'all brought up bleaching it in the backpack. Like that's a great, you know, put that thing in a bathtub in the hotel and drown it in bleach so that there's no evidence to be drawn from it and disappear. I particularly liked your insight about like, I think the 9 to 5 caught him here. Like,
oh yeah,
he had to clock in on the computer and was sitting at a McDonald's too long. And that's kind of what pulled him out. I was a little surprised anybody just spotted a guy and called it in. Like from those pictures you saw, did any of those like make you think you would have been able to ID the dude?
No, not at all. And that's something that's interesting that maybe both y'all want to talk about here. But there's a concept in law enforcement called parallel construction. which is essentially you know someone is guilty either through illegal means or through means that you don't want to reveal to the public. And so you end up having to like kind of create a parallel evidentiary path that you'll use in court. So, maybe they've actually tracked him with some sort of cool super AI that's tapped into every single CCTV camera through a backdoor in like the Wi-Fi routers.
But you can't put that out. You can't say that out loud.
Yeah, you can't say that out loud. Or maybe like the government who has access to that doesn't even want the police to know. And so they're kind of like spoon feeding things and like, oh, we have a tipster that said he might have exited near this entrance of Central Park. You should see if you find the cameras there. And then the cops go and interview people and they find a camera. And then, they send an agent to a McDonald's and they're like, oh, yeah, we're just going to call in a tip. Because, everyone first was like, oh, one of the cashiers called in or something, like an employee. The story's changed now. It's a customer.
And the customer tipped they tipped the cashier, and then the cashier called it in.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be much easier for anyone could have faked a tip. You don't even have to be there to fake a tip. So, I mean, there's certainly the possibility.
That's a good point. Maybe that's where it got a little out of control on him, is like now they've got this weird story about her not receiving the money because she called 911 instead of directly the hotline to receive the reward money. Maybe that's a little bit of them kind of trying to smudge it a little bit and like, we got a tip. Oh, we're actually not. They should have just been like, yeah, we're just going to give somebody $50,000 for.
If they actually deny the person, like the cashier, the money because it's like, oh, you called 911 instead of the tip line, that is the exact reason why everybody was cheering for this guy to get away. Like it only galvanizes society against the cause even more, where it's just like wait, what? They actually helped catch the guy, but you're gonna be like, oh, sorry, you actually called the wrong you called the wrong number. So
the internet's gonna ruin your life now and dox you out of existence to where you're not able to be in a public space. But also that $50,000 that would not compensate for the headache you're going to deal with the internet and losing said job and losing. We're going to retract that now as well. It's like, holy shit, can you at least throw a bone to this person? And especially if she didn't even call it in the first place, they're just kind of using her as like a patsy.
Oh, right.
To find the excuse for this illegal means of gathering evidence. And now they've like ruined some young girl's life who the internet is shitting on, and the McDonald's franchise is ruined with 1-star reviews, and people are going to.
I saw my favorite review was this McDonald's is a pack of rats.
So I must ask a question here because I missed all of this. I didn't know that there was anything about like a reward or tip being paid out. Could you all educate me and maybe some of the listeners about what exactly happened or what was going on with that like tip or reward thing?
Yeah, from what I understand, there was a $50,000 reward for the typical, hey, any evidence leading to the arrest of the suspect, and you get a $50,000 reward. And allegedly, the story was that she called 911, cops showed up, arrested him, and then they're saying, oh no, the rules of the $50,000 is that you have to call the hotline. You just called 911, so we're actually not associated with the reward money. We're just another agency. So it's kind of one of these weird like workaround type of things to not
get you on the. They're trying to get them on the fine print instead of rewarding somebody for doing their civic duty and helping apprehend this dangerous person. They're going to be like, sorry, you called the wrong number. You get nothing. And that's kind of the sentiment, which if that is the case, it is shit like that makes everybody root for somebody who shoots somebody in the back in broad daylight.
Well, in the age of misinformation, I must ask, were we ever able to confirm if that had really happened, or if it's just like another folk story?
I just saw it on the internet with no vetting whatsoever. It was just floating around some of the meme pages I follow. So who is to say if it is true or not? I have no idea.
Okay, fair enough. I'm curious as well myself. It would be very ironic for that to happen and very on brand in terms of the nature of this shooting and the nature of this social phenomenon. But it's kind of tough because it's just a misinformation factory on the internet. So I have no idea. The last official thing I had seen was just that a customer had called in the tip that they recognized him, which, again, who knows if it's even real or if it's just part of the parallel construction.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Can you expound on that? Because I've actually never heard that term before you talked about it tonight in our text thread.
Okay, that's fair. I actually don't know where the term came from in its original sense, but essentially, this is kind of something that happens like if you have an illegal wiretap or if you have information you've obtained illegally, and you know someone is like, this is our dude, this is our dude, and everyone's like, well, hey, look, you can't admit that in court, but now we know it's our guy, so we're going to try and go about other means of finding and creating some sort of evidentiary chain that we can produce in court.
Yeah. What kind of tax evasion charges do we need for Al Capone?
Yeah, that is actually kind of like a decent way to get started. He's been doing drugs and what was it, prohibition? So it would have been like moonshine.
He's
like
running
alcohol.
booze.
Yeah, and you know that there's like a lot of money coming through that like he's not paying taxes on clearly. So you start like digging through his finances instead, and you start finding like, oh, look at all these turkeys he gave away. These were at least like $2.70 a pop back then, or however much inflation has fucked us. And so you start making estimates about how much that actually cost him. You dig through like what legal businesses he has, and you find a big gaping hole. And then before you know it, it all comes crashing down. That's kind of similar, but like parallel construction is instead like constructing evidence for a crime that you have. So I mean, like, yeah, you could start with like an illegal wiretap, and maybe you hear information about something happening in a specific block, and so maybe you start setting up your patrols in like a slightly different like organization or network, so that, like cops happen to be passing by that block 50 times more often than previously. It looks innocent enough, and then maybe a cop actually sees something and they get what's the word, exigent circumstances in the moment where they can just bust in without a warrant. And suddenly through there, you've like constructed an evidentiary claim based on evidence that you have illegally obtained, even though the actual evidence you obtained later is legal. And that's one form of parallel construction. And the other form is like, we have means, say, some sort of supercomputer attached to all CCTV. We don't want to tell anyone it exists, so we just start dropping hints we get from the supercomputer in front of the police until they eventually nab the guy. And that's just me making up a story.
Pay attention, you fucking pigs.
Right. Like,
dropping hints in front of these obese donut hovering detectives.
It
I
does.
flipped my hair at the NYPD 3 times. They still haven't approached me. Can't they see I'm sitting on top of the drug bust of a lifetime?
Right. It does make you wonder if it is something like that, or are these actually the capabilities of the NYPD if they actually care? Because I know when they caught the person, the police commissioner got on and said that they had 200 detectives working on it nonstop. They've sifted through thousands of hours of footage. Now that might be right, your parallel construction where they're trying to create the front, or maybe they just actually did their job. And it takes a high profile killing like that for them to actually dedicate the resources that you need to find somebody. It is really interesting because I could see either one. Actually, either is very plausible to me, and maybe it is being fed to have a supercomputer. Maybe they're just actually incentivized to give a shit for once for the first time in a while. Because, well, I mean, in the last week, I have no idea, I haven't looked this number up, how many other murders have happened in big cities. In New York City, I'm sure it's a non-zero number. Places like Miami, Chicago, Baltimore, Philadelphia. How many people have actually died in a very similar manner, but get no attention, no resources, and just kind of written off as a victim of their circumstances? It's there's a lot of really interesting conversations about class, about incentives, about what captures the American attention, and what does that show, like what does that reflection show about us? There's so many interesting things that this little episode in 2024 is brought to the forefront.
If we stick on the topic of conspiracy theory, there is a perfect answer to this. One of the reasons why everybody wants to believe in conspiracy theories is usually because it's covering up a truth that really hurts. And one of the truths here is like, oh, the police give a shit finally. Wow, they can't actually solve murders. And, when it happens in like a city like New York that's heavily surveilled, people get killed in public a lot. And there have been a number of public murders. But like one of the really sad truths is like police all across the nation are like horribly understaffed. And then, you start talking about DAs and courts that might make the actual act of arresting someone like meaningless. There was a dude recently who went on a stabbing rampage in New York. I believe 2 weeks before this, he stabbed 2 or 3 people, and he'd been arrested like I think 12 times before that, and just kind of released. Went on a stabbing rampage. He killed 2 people. He stabbed 3 people, I think. I don't remember the exact details. And this guy's just in and out, in and out, in and out. And something like that, it demoralizes police. You start asking the question of like, what's the point of even bringing this guy in? Do I want to go through the hassle of this night and this paperwork? I'm only going to see him again later. And then on top of that, if you're short staffed, they're just, they're not going to give the proper attention to things, which is why, like, for instance, when a cop gets shot, they drop everything, whole city on lockdown, manhunt. You watch them like blast by and they tear a whole neighborhood apart and they find the guy barricaded or whatever. They take him out. Like all sorts of awful stuff happens. And then like your mom gets shot. And you go down to the station and they're like, sorry, we haven't assigned a detective to this case yet. You don't have anywhere you can submit your evidence to them yet. And it's a serious case. So that's one of those things we run into where the institutions that are supposed to protect us and guarantee certain like basic civilities are present within like society are just utterly failing us. And it's much easier for us to turn towards a conspiracy theory of like parallel construction, a patsy, MK Ultra, all sorts of stuff, instead of just looking and being like, damn, society fucking blows. The cops, they don't care about us and they don't even have enough people. If you're not wealthy, they're not going to solve your crime. That's the real sad truth. And
that's very fair.
And we pitch or we grift a conspiracy theory, more than anything, we're serving like a deep emotional need for the people who are listening. And it's one of the reasons people come towards pages that will like talk about this kind of thing. And it's tough to look at yourself and be like, oh, I'm a grifter. I am grifting people's emotions right now when I'm saying this out here.
On some level, it's more comforting to think that it is lizard people instead of just other humans doing this to human beings.
Absolutely.
Like this couldn't be humanity.
I think that's actually a really big motivating factor in why people believe in conspiracy theories, because it's a lot more comforting to think that your life in the world is shit because of somebody else versus your own actions or just random happenings. That there's actually, I think that's probably a scarier notion for a lot of people, that there's actually nobody in control. And even those that are in control are only hanging on to it by a very small thread, and that their control of whatever's happening is so small that it is, at the end of the day, it is just the jungle. And I think that's a big psychological pull for people to believe in conspiracies, because the alternative is terrifying, just like the alternative of what Kiefer's talking about is depressing. The cops don't give a shit about you. You're not wealthy. It's all the same. It's this turns a spotlight into something that's extremely unpleasant.
Absolutely.
That was one question I had through this too, and maybe you already answered it with that spiel there, but it was jumped out to me of like how big of a story this was, how much resources went into finding the killer. When, like, to your point, you can have a family member murdered and they're like, well, it's been 48 hours. So I don't know what you expect us to do at this point. Your person's dead. They're gone. Don't worry about it. We don't find people this late into it. And why was it such a national media story too? Like everybody was tuned into this one. Is it just the profile? Is it just because this guy was worth so much money himself? What were the factors, I guess, both in one, this being such a big story and just the amount of resources there? It makes sense to me when it's a cop, because it's like, hey, they're circling the wagons, we're getting one of our guys justice. But what did the cops see in this healthcare CEO or the person who has authority over the cops to force their focus? Why was there so much into this case?
Well, that's an interesting question. And if we were to turn that question on ourselves for a minute and ask, like, what was your personal reaction the first time you read or heard about the story? Did you dig more into it? Were you curious? Did it strike you in any sort of sense, or did you kind of like throw it off and look at something else? Because there was a lot happening last week, but I'm just curious, like, what was your personal reaction to it?
I was traveling back and forth to Missouri, so I missed quite a bit of it. To be
fair.
honest, I kind of like my knee-jerk reaction was kind of to like read it and go like, "Ha, fine, got kind of get what you deserve," sort of thing, you know. Like CEO took a cap, I guess. Especially when I saw it was a healthcare, it was like, well, you know, stuff happens.
Okay. Matt, what about you?
No, it definitely did jump me straight to kind of the vigilante idea, because this is an idea I've pitched out there before of like, how do you in a world where regulatory capture makes every governmental regulation impossible and actually have the opposite effect, in my opinion, in a lot of regards, where a free market doesn't exist. Like what are the optionality here? And you know, it lines up a little bit.
Okay. And
fair.
Matt, what was your initial reaction?
I was super fascinated by it. It is something that captured it. It took hold of my imagination instantly. I was on the internet all day the day after. I've listened to, there's a couple of YouTube channels that I like that it's like the Long Crime Network that I've just been following, because they just always have it's always just updates on legal stuff happening in the world, or at least in the United States. And so I was so very fascinated by it, and for several reasons. One, kind of about like the brazenness of it. It's a very bold thing to shoot somebody. And I know that everyone says broad day, like 6:45 in New York City it might as well be noon in any other place in the world. I mean, that is 6:45 in New York City that's a very bustling, active time. I mean, there's so many people. And so I was kind of blown away by the fact that somebody was bold enough to shoot somebody in broad daylight like that. And then second, I think what captured, to answer,
can you imagine how slow that e-bike feels right after that?
Oh, dude, never actually thought about that, but I bet it is slow. It's like, damn, I wish this was a dirt bike. Where's the motor on this thing?
Let's go.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think to Logan's question about like, why does it capture? I think that America, we always have this like, we glorify outlaws in a lot of ways, right? Like you can look at our founding fathers.
Maybe it's a nicer way to put it.
What's that?
Rebels might be
sure. And that's something that's, I think that's a very American thing to do, where you take somebody that's clearly acting outside of the legal and societal parameters that we've set up, and then you don't want to call them outlaws. We want to call them rebels because we glorify them. And I think it's very American that we look at people like Jesse James and Billy the Kid and Bonnie and Clyde and Al Capone and these mobsters, and we have a fascination with them. I mean, we make movies over and we glorify actions like The Godfather and what's the one? Oh, I can't think of one. It's got Ray Liotta. It's such a great movie.
Goodfellas?
Yeah, Goodfellas. Yeah. Goodfellas.
I haven't seen that movie all the way.
Okay, that's fine. It's things like The Departed, right? Like we glorify and we make these characters into like this we make them larger than life. And while we do that, we also kind of we turn a blind eye to the facts that these sometimes are just horrible people, right? Sometimes they do just go out and rob somebody and they shoot them, and that person's only crime was being in the wrong place in the wrong time. And we don't really mourn the victim of those stories of Bonnie and Clyde. What we do is we say, yeah, we're Americans, we're rebels, we're not outlaws, we're rebels, we're above the law. And I think that's why I think there's something in our culture that just glorifies it. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing, because I'm guilty of it as well. But I think that there's something about Americans that we just like somebody with a gun doing whatever they want. And we celebrate that.
I wonder how many other like globally spanning empires have had this attachment to an underdog identity. Like I'm sure the Romans were like, yeah, we're gonna go fight the big Gallic Empire. I'm sure Romans saw themselves as what they were. Maybe that's an assumption, though. Perhaps that's not true.
Yeah, you never know.
The Japanese running all over Asia, thinking they were the underdogs while they were dunking Korean people into boiling vats of water.
And yeah, raping cities. Yeah, we're the underdogs. All right, the line's like we're punching above our weight class here. Okay, yeah, it's a really good point. It is interesting that a society that is as wealthy and as powerful as ours is,
And is
we
economically
consist.
manipulative around the entire
Mhm.
world.
Yeah, that we look at ourselves as underdogs. And I think that there's two different things though, like the individual, because like you and I, like, yeah, we're all beneficiaries of living in America and being Americans, but you and I would like none of us look at like we're the top dogs, right? Like we probably view ourselves as underdogs in a lot of ways. And so maybe just because your country isn't the underdog doesn't mean that it's like I think that there's like some weird psychological separation going on that we don't associate our immediate lives with the status of our country.
Well, that's fair, and I would say that's probably true on most levels, really. I mean, it's not like we have all that much say in the economic
I
hitman
got no say.
behavior or the way
I got
go
no
around
say
the
in
world.
what things.
Yeah, we're ostensibly just we're just the slaves of the empire that are fortunate enough to get to wear the flag in here and reap what small benefits there are from being inside the wall, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe our underdog mindset as Americans is actually just kind of like a vestigial, like leftover from a point in history. Because for most of the time this country existed, we were kind of underdogs. We're
Very
facing off
true.
against like large countries with long established traditions, monarchies, and whatnot. And it wasn't until after World War II where we actually like were like, oh hey, shit,
We're
there's
actually
nobody
in
left.
charge.
Yeah, just looking around, looking at the rebel, and like, damn, we made it, mom. You know.
That's fair. That's
So
actually a really
like,
good point.
you know, that kind of idea I think is something that's kind of like leftover that we still hold on to and like start to root for underdogs, even though we ourselves are 100% not the underdogs anywhere we go whatsoever. And it's almost kind of like sad. I think like when Americans go to certain places that they might have venerated from here because they've never seen it, and they're like, oh, those superior cultures, things are so much better in those native tribes. And then you go and like you join some like NGO, and you're like, I'm gonna go donate my time in Guatemala where they know traditional ways and like things are better. And you go to the natives and they're like dumping dung into the water that they drink from like upstream from the village. And, you know, they're tossing out plastic wrappers like just in the corners of the jungle. And you're just like, what happened to my people? You know, it's just like there's this weird reaction.
But my civilization.
It happens like almost anywhere you go. Like you go to Europe and you have all these ideas about like, you know, their culture, long legacies and whatnot. And then like Paris is just covered in trash. And
Paris is such a horrible city.
It's a filthy mess. There's nothing good about that place whatsoever. And there's like there are a handful of places around the world you can go and you can be like, wow, this is superior. But for the most part, like America is just
you kind of associate white trash specifically with like an American thing, but like the white trash problem in Europe was so bad that they like ostracized them from the country and like have their own Roma name now, and they have to travel in caravans.
Oh yeah, for real.
Participate in society.
It's true.
Which, you know, maybe it's not like Europe gets everything wrong. There are things we can learn.
Probably. But when if we dig back to like the earlier question too about like why did this story blow up so big on the national stage, and we look at our own opinions about it, it blew up within us. Like, I mean, that happened Wednesday morning. And like Wednesday, I think maybe 5 hours later, you were like, hey, Logan's not going to be on the show. Do you want to join? What are we going to talk about? And like, I think within like one message, we're like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this shit.
Obviously,
and like we both were very excited about it. And like, I was captured by it too. And I think one of the reasons it captured us so much is just the circumstances of where this guy got shot. Like whoever wrote the first story wrote United Healthcare CEO shot outside of investor conference. And because he was shot outside of the investor conference, the media covering it mentioned that he was United Healthcare CEO. If he got shot anywhere else, the story would have been Brian Thompson shot. And then, you know, a day later, someone would have dug into his like personals, like, oh, he was actually the CEO, and nobody would have cared because it's already passed and outside of the brain.
I would have loved to be in the room when they decided after the shooting, like, obviously, we're not going to have this conference anymore. Just to be in that room and be able to say, like, I mean, guys, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders, and to cancel an entire investment meeting just because of the death of a CEO.
Just what did Mom always say? Don't cry over spilled CEO.
You know, the awful thing, there were probably a few employees who were sitting in there thinking to themselves, like, should we cancel the conference? But like, we're actually uncertain, couldn't make the decision, didn't know if they get yelled at if they said like, hey, we're going to cancel. You know, I think it would have actually been like a tough decision from like just an employee standpoint, because you don't want to be the first person who's like, this is emotionally affecting me. I need to take a day or whatever. Because like that's probably what you would feel actually if your CEO got murdered and you're at the investor conference.
Right.
But you don't want to be the first one to say it. You want to just be joining that thought train as it's already leaving the station.
You're right.
So I imagine everyone was
You
kind of
want to say it, but you also have a flashback to that day in the board meeting when Brian was going on about fiduciary responsibilities.
No chill.
You're like,
this is exactly
he did say it.
Profit over people, as he screamed and threw a coffee mug at my head.
Logan, this is exactly why we had the disclaimer at the beginning of last episode.
I appreciated the credit. I liked that y'all tried to attribute any fucked up things you said to me. Made me feel so proud of myself.
Look, man, you have a lot of care in your hearts, but it doesn't come out in your comedy.
It doesn't come out of my mouth very often.
It's a really good way to put it. Yeah, I think the where is a big factor of this too, because if he was shot in Minneapolis, I don't know if it would have gotten any sort of national coverage. I mean, it would have gotten coverage regionally, you know, but I don't know if it ever would have been such a story. It never would have. I can't say it never would have. I don't think that it would have garnered the media attention if he was shot outside the building, like the headquarters of United Healthcare in Minneapolis. I think that it's probably that it's Midtown Manhattan, outside the investor meeting, that probably gives it the legs of a story that can actually capture the American attention.
Yeah, I think so too. And like, I also think if we were to Google search this, and I'm doing this right now, and date the search by date and have it be the date before the shooting happened, we'd probably find that there have been CEOs shot even this year, and we just didn't notice.
Oh,
so I'm curious. And you know, if it happened to be done in a time period or in a place, where no one's paying attention in the same way, or where maybe the first news story comes out doesn't mention the CEO, yeah, I think these things come and go. I definitely remember a lot of CEO suicides earlier this year. Let's see.
Which is the more productive way. We don't want to encourage anybody to take a gun and murder anybody. You should cyberbully them into killing themselves like an adult.
Make bullying great again, baby.
Oh, damn, this is interesting. So the CEO of Loop, I don't know what Loop is. He was shot by a demoted executive on the 17th floor of the Bank of America building at work in the office. But this is a 2015 shooting. Nobody gave a fuck. Really didn't. It just didn't send the same kind of message, which is interesting because in a shooting like that, it definitely would have been mentioned that the CEO was shot at work by an employee who'd been like demoted, not even fired, just demoted, which is kind of wild. That kind of story should have had the same level of national attention.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the healthcare CEO thing struck such a nerve with almost everybody in America that we just couldn't let it go.
Almost gave everybody exactly their side too. I mean, the number of non-CEOs that were alarmed at the reaction to this was pretty low. Like everybody almost in unison. I think my favorite tweet I saw was that it's important to live one's life in a manner that does not incite thunderous applause from everyone else when you're gunned down in the middle of the street.
Yeah,
Ooh,
that's a good
very
point.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the reasons why it stuck with us as well. Because I remember like I was on Twitter, group chats and whatnot, just looking at reactions to this, and like almost across the board. I think we opened the thing last week with everyone is laughing at this. Literally everybody, and that was the truth. And it's kind of a sad truth as well, because like, you know, this guy, he's a cog in the machine in terms of like our actual problems with healthcare. You know, he's not really responsible for any of them. But it just
y'all even brought this up, kind of the Nuremberg offense. So it's like, does that matter when you're a guy who's been, and I know I heard somewhere that he'd been with this company for I think 7 years, 20 years, 7 years as an upper executive or something like that. And so it's not like he's new to the program here, that he was at some point you go, when is your personal responsibility for your morality to kick in?
It's interesting. I didn't think about this until now. He'd been with them for 20 years. So he had seen the healthcare industry like pre-Obamacare. And also like as an employee at a company, he also would have watched, his own coverage change quite significantly during that period. I wonder if he had any misgivings or thought about the effect legislation was having on the choices they had to make as an insurance company. Did he go along with it? Did he not? Did he like it or did he not? Because there's plenty of people who are employees at companies they don't fully agree with. Like I used to work for a green energy company, and obviously I don't really have the same opinion about carbon credits or some of the financialization of pollution
When
that
did
they did.
you leave that and go back into the closet?
Brother, I've always been out of the closet.
Sorry, derailed for no reason. I just wanted to get a joke.
Of course. But even at like the executive level, I could see people disagreeing with things. Like actually I can't talk about it right now, but I'm interviewing for something else that's in crypto and like in the energy space as well. And there's parts of the company that I disagree with. And they're fairly large parts of the company. And yeah, I'm still willing to take the role because it's a nice crossover of two things I'm interested in that I like. But there's everybody's conflicted at their jobs, I would say. There's a handful of people that aren't concert pianists who love every single thing about what they do for work. And so, it's a little hypocritical for us to kind of like make this man get up on the cross and die for our sins because like he may or may not agree with everything that happens at his workplace and things that he still doesn't have control over, even as CEO. Even though we're all probably guilty of the same. So it's a weird little bit of like I don't know, conflicted ennui that I feel and that I think every employee should be feeling when they're cheering about someone getting shot for things they do with their job, But here we all are. We're still all laughing and cheering regardless. It'd be interesting. Oh, you go. I've been talking for a while.
Well, it is interesting, and I think cheering might be the wrong word. I know that there are some people that actually celebrate the death of another human being, and I don't know if this one applies. Like, I don't know if this should be celebrated. I think though that what caught a lot of people off
We all hated
guard.
Kobe Bryant, but have some nuance.
Shut the fuck up.
Damn, I was not ready for that. I was
left
not
that nice white lady in Colorado alone.
Zero chill, dude.
I was not ready for the Kobe, dude. Dude hit me from downtown with that 90-point performance, dude. Wow. I would say that I know a lot of kind of shock came from like I say pretty much every week I listen to those radio shows on Sirius XM because it's always so interesting to hear what middle of the road self-described moderates have to say. And one of the hosts he was blown away by the vitriol that was coming in where, he starts off his rant talking about it. And then there were so many callers that he ended up doing a segment on his nightly news show about it and played portions of the calls that he got in. And I think for a lot of people, what they didn't understand is just how much anger is out there, how much the wealth inequality has left people behind, that K-shaped recovery that really that accelerated under COVID. And I think for some, and like, I know that these radio hosts, they're not like, you wouldn't put them as like mega elite people, right? They're not worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're all worth like at least a couple million. They live in very nice neighborhoods in very nice towns. They have really good jobs, and they're all worth like a couple $1,000,000. And even though you might have like kind of the ear of the people, they're not of the people, if that makes sense. And I think that for them, it was very jarring because the average person has no respect for the healthcare industry. We look at it as something, it is pretty much like maybe one of the real evils that you might encounter in your daily life is probably the healthcare industry. And it's the convoluted insurance schemes and structurings and, oh, I don't understand my policy, and it's probably the one thing that hits people the most, because 99% of us are one crippling hospital visit away from just being ruined forever. And so when all of these people were calling in and saying, well, hey, I'm not cheering that this guy is dead, but, and then what you got was a bunch of, but my own personal experience is that United Healthcare denied my claim. I had to come out of pocket $80,000 for my sick kid, yada yada. You know what I mean? And all of these like real stories that the decisions of that company that they made started to pour out. And I think that caught a lot of people off guard, is how much anger there is, because there's the difference of the haves and the have-nots. It comes very quickly. And if you are somebody that is worth $1 million, relatively speaking to those that are worth $1 billion, you have nothing. But compared to somebody that's has less than $500 savings, couldn't absorb a $3,000 car repair, you have everything. And I think it was very telling for some people to actually get a glimpse into how a lot of average people are actually living their lives.
Yeah, it is. And Logan, you can go first, actually.
I was going to say some of it I think is less cheering. Maybe that's the wrong descriptor. It's more like a release valve. Like the frustrations with this system have finally boiled over.
I think that's
where
it.
People are not finding sympathy for this individual, or even if it is a modicum of sympathy, they're like, yeah, but look at all this, the way that this corporation has purported itself and acted in an amoral standard. And I know I've kind of pitched this to both of you guys before we started recording, but I mean, I and probably you two as well would argue that we would like to see an avenue of this resolved through free market economy, but that's off the table right now. That's not an option that we have in front of us. We have a corporate welfare system that allows these corporations that are this large to operate at an unsustainable rate, at an irresponsible rate that doesn't make any sense. We've had our own court system tell us that the only obligation that these CEOs have is to the shareholders of their company. So on some level, it's like, what is the option left you have to make a corporation act in a morally upstanding way? And maybe that is that we need to add to the incentive base that these shareholders are worried about, that maybe if you act so immorally and try to use the power of the government and close every loophole up to any free market avenue to another option, then maybe your life needs to be on the line for there to be a strong incentive for you to act morally.
Maybe. And I don't think this problem can be solved by shooting it, as un-American as it is to say that. Because almost everybody involved is kind of at fault, and the system is very demonic in the sense that it's designed so that if you are smart enough, you can kind of skate around. Like, we have universal healthcare if you don't pay your bills, but you kind of have to be able to dance through a bunch of people threatening you and understand like the legalities of what's going on. Especially like in the state here of Texas I live in, I haven't had insurance for a while. They've made it so that medical collectors cannot affect your credit in any way, shape, or form with medical debt. So like they call, I get to laugh at them on the phone for a long time. I show up to the hospital with something wrong, and they charge you initially when you show up. I'll pay that, obviously, because I want to get care. And they'll send me a bill afterwards, and I'll look at it and say, does this make sense in my head? Does this feel fair? Do I feel like this is a reasonable price? And if the answer is yes, I pay it. And then they do this thing where exactly a year later, they edit the bill and they send me a new bill in the mail with some sort of nonsense about how like the $800 treatment is now $11,000. I don't pay that shit. You just ignore it. It goes to collections. And for context, I haven't had insurance for almost 3 years now, and one of my big bills just fell off collections about 5 months ago. It was hilarious because they sold it to like the fourth company, and I basically just explained like why I was never going to pay, why I wasn't going to pay. I had already paid like an amount that I thought was fair, and they could keep calling me and we'd have the same conversation. And the guy said, okay, thank you. And that was the last call I ever got. Before that, I'd get a call about once a month, and you just sit through it. And like that's the sad reality about the healthcare system is like all of the numbers are made up like across the board, and like nothing makes sense. So you have hospitals who are just charging whatever they feel like. You have doctors who are kind of guessing and playing whack-a-mole because they have too many patients and they don't have enough time to really sit and think about what's going on. And then you've got insurance companies who are just kind of billing whatever, and they're determined to like deny care on certain things. And there's certain things too, like doctors will just kind of ask for whatever because they know like someone else is going to pay. So you might show up and you might have like 8 different treatment options, and the doctor's like, oh well, let's just ask for the most expensive one and see if they'll pay, because like nobody in the room is paying for it, so nobody gives a shit. They're like, let's get
right. It's a victimless crime. We're taking advantage of this insurance company.
Yeah, if every rental car costs the same price, you're going to pick the Lamborghini every single time. And that's kind of like the weird incentive we're put in. And then the insurance companies are getting all sorts of like weird, crazy bills. They're denying half the things. And then also they have an obligation to cover everybody. So if someone shows up and they've got some sort of weird like spinal edema, which is a term I'm making up. Those two don't go together. But like, they show up and like they have to be charged the same amount as like a regular person. It's ludicrous. And one of my friends recently signed up for something called Crowd Health. I hate to shill, but it's basically a crowdsourced insurance. They negotiate on your behalf. They decide not to pay bills if they don't like them. It's cash pay for you, so you pay like the regular small stuff. And my experience without insurance has been that everything is cheaper except designer glasses lens. That's the only thing that's been more expensive without insurance, which is wild. If suddenly someone's not paying $800 a month on my behalf, my healthcare costs got cheaper across the board. Does that make any fucking sense? No, it doesn't. And then on top of that, now I get to just ignore bills. Does that make any fucking sense? No, it doesn't make any sense. And then there are people who have insurance and they're feeling like they can't ignore bills. They're feeling like these threats make an impact on their life. And if they live in a different state, it might, because there are certain states where that stuff still can go on your credit record. But across the board, people are kind of getting like preyed on by this weird demonic entity that's sitting on top of the healthcare industry as a whole. And people feel anger and they see someone die and they get shot, and they don't know if that person is the demon or just one of the demon's fingers, or maybe not even associated with a demon. But like, we can't help but cheer because it feels like a strike back at this large entity that's preying on people. But anyways, Crowd Health is really cool because your deductible is based on your weight and your body fat percentage. And you can actually like decrease your payment if you get to the top 25% for lowest body fat in the country based on your demographics. So like, you have an incentive to work out. You have incentives to like get like blood scans and whatever your fucking your hormone levels, get them in like into like acceptable ranges. Like, there's all sorts of financial incentives, and then they're paying the bill on your behalf for anything that's crazy. The cheap stuff you can handle on your own, and you get all the benefits of just ignoring any bill you don't like and walking away from it. Like, it's a win-win for people who have like others on their insurance plan. Like, if you have kids or like a wife and there's more people besides you, because if it's me all day, I'll sit there with the collection people and I'll just be like, fuck you, but if there's other people involved, there's like the pressure from the longhouse. But it's very weird that this system has been set up in this manner and nobody's fixing it. And then you're expecting like a 90 IQ dude who has a regular job, regular life, to be able to navigate this mass of
the
like
intricacies of the healthcare system,
regulations. Absolutely. Like, there are people who take out car loans, they don't understand them, which I think is demonic and predatory. And you want to put these people into a hospital and ask them to understand their bill. I think an unfriendly way to set up society. Like, it's not set up for the least of us, which is a huge problem.
Telling you, Mario, they fucked me on this back thing over here.
That's I know, it's like
he was won me over, honestly, with that spiel. I think I've come around to your viewpoint. I think you're right, and we do have to kill more CEOs until we get the right ones.
Is that what he said? Because I must I guess so. Damn,
a little bit there in the middle.
Damn, I think we listened to 2 different lectures.
No, it's fair, man. It's totally fair.
The end.
Yeah, there's something that I will say that it's a very that's a very unsympathetic character to try to, if you're trying to gather support for or public sentiment, that's a very hard one to put forward. But I do think that there is, I guess it's really a question of like, what do you want society to look like? Because as satisfying as it is, and I understand that sometimes extenuating circumstances abound. And I guess the question that jumps to my mind is, what is the level of violence that we want to see to solve things? And the answer is not none, right? Because sometimes violence is necessary. And anybody that preaches violence is not the answer, that's not true. Like sometimes you have to sometimes you need Hitler to eat a bullet, and you need a large army of Soviets.
Going the other way with Hitler there for a second.
Oh yeah, it's like sometimes it's like
Imagine the video freezing. Sometimes you need Hitler.
It freezes. They're like, I was not.
It's too large. Sometimes you have to coal it, otherwise.
I was not about to go on a pro Hitler rant. It was, it's like you need the army, you need the Red Army at the gates of Berlin, right? Like you need to invade. Like it's like sometimes, like I wrote this paper in college about like immoral use of violence, where the general who was deployed with the UN in Rwanda when the whole Rwandan genocide started, he sent back, he's like, I need 2,500 troops and armored personnel carriers, and I can stop this in a weekend. He's like, this can all be done in 72 hours because it's a mob running around with machetes. And then some Dutch peacekeepers got killed. The UN got scared. And then 4 months later, there's 800,000 people hacked to death. Using violence in that scenario to dispatch and crush the initial genocidaires would have been a great use of violence that I don't think that anyone's going to be like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have killed those guys, right? It's so anybody that says there's no answers that can't be solved with violence is just being a lunatic. But then we start to push closer in, like now we're in this grayer area, right? Because we all know that it's like no violence isn't a good thing, but it's like, do you want to see a society where this is more common or not? And I don't want to live in a society, just because I think the long-term ramifications of it are not in anyone's benefit, because this time it might be justified, quote unquote. It might be somebody that is an unsympathetic character. It might be somebody that you could galvanize the population behind. But do you really want to see individuals saying, I don't like how this corporation's behaving, therefore I'm going to hold the CEO personally accountable for this?
Yeah, you kind of wish it would take on and after 4 years of ranting against the woke left and cancel culture, it's like you almost want the cancel culture of vote with your dollar kind of thing, of like it really is kind of beholden upon us as the consumers on some level to come together if we want to find a non-violent way to address these problems. To like on some level, you got to come together and go, hey, these guys deny more claims than anybody. We have to disqualify them. They're an amoral corporation, and there's a level. And I guess with that, you have to kind of, again, we're getting back to my utopian world building of my libertarian society, where you have to educate every single person, or at least a vast majority, to a level where you can have an effective voting with your dollar system, I guess. So maybe this is a completely out of reach pipe dream of mine.
It's possible, but listen to this. When we talk about like solving problems with violence, what level of violence is acceptable, and like I think that's a perfectly fine question to ask when like the clear answer to the problem is going to actually be violence. But I think this is one where like a clear answer to this is actually just repealing a few legislations, freeing the market a little bit, allowing people to negotiate a bit more, and also like the way hospitals bill right now, it's like ludicrous. Like, I mean, the shit that I refuse to pay the hospital is like when they send a bill 12 months later, which is what they all do. Like, imagine you go to McDonald's, you're like, I'd like a burger, please. And they're like, okay. And they make the burger, they give it to you, and they're like, we're going to take $3 up front. And you're like, okay, that's a decent price for a burger. You finish eating, and then they're like, oh, actually, the burger was $18. And you're like, well, all right, that's a little steep, but like, fine. And if you knew that, maybe you would have said like, oh, I'm going to fucking Wendy's. The burger's there at $12. But Wendy's won't tell you either. So you just kind of
pay $18. You don't have to, but we will take your credit card.
Yeah, it's kind of silly. And then like, imagine a month later, McDonald's sends you a bill in the mail for like $8,000 for the hamburger you had a month ago, and you can't even remember. Like, did I actually pay them? Like, how much was that again? Did they tell me?
Or do you have any idea how expensive the equipment is that makes that hamburger?
Yeah, that's the other nonsense too. Like, I understand some of the things back there are like actually like fairly complex and whatnot. But some of this stuff, like, okay, the X-ray, I get there's like 10 million regulations for like the little bit of like radioactive material that's held in there inside of like a weird little lead casing, and there's all sorts of like
the X-ray bomber this morning.
But there's like
we just dropped the second sun on Japan.
Like the actual like radioactive material would be really cheap if it wasn't for all these like 18 million different legislations for like how we have to transport it, because some like safe crackers broke into the wrong box once and they picked up a weird flashbang. It's these weird costs that are suddenly being like baked into society and that we also don't get to see up front. Like imagine if everyone got to see up front how much the bill was. And I got laughed at once. I was in Colorado. I just torn a ligament in my ankle snowboarding, and I was like terrified because I just barely not had insurance at that point. And I'm talking to the doctor, and he's like, "Well, we can give you crutches when you get out." And I was sitting there like, "How much do the crutches cost?" And he's like, "I don't know." And it was a weird thing for me to sit through because at the time I believed I would have to pay for it if it'd be on the bill. So I said no. I went to Walmart and I bought crutches for like $30, which is like, why the fuck would the hospital crutches? They're probably like $3,000.
They were probably at least a couple $100, my guess.
And
probably like $250.
It would have been something nutty. $250 is probably low because the bags of saline on that bill were $250 each. There's no way the crutches.
Well, crutches were probably like $600.
It probably would have been a number that I would have laughed at and been like, "No, I can solve this myself." And I think
we have to bring the crutches in ourselves, and the elevator was out that day, so we had to.
Instead, now it's like the labor to bring it up from the storage. No, I think
we actually paid the CEO by the hour to carry those up himself.
And it's very expensive. No, I think you are onto something that's like the larger question that I think that a lot of people are frustrated about is just how complex, convoluted, and like no understanding of how the American healthcare system works. And I'm certainly not smart enough to begin to know how to fix it, right? Because I know that some people like this is spurred on a conversation about, oh, this is why we need single payer healthcare. And it's like, okay, that could be an option, but the flip side of that is, are Americans willing to have the consequences of having a single payer system, right? It's like your quality of care is going to decrease, wait times increase, reliability decreases. But if more people, it's like, it's the kind of the trade-off game, but there's so much of like how our insurance gets tied, like our insurance was tied to our work. And that's because of, that's a World War II statute that just lingered on because the government froze wages, during World War II. And so as a way for companies to incentivize others to come work for them, they attached healthcare to it. So there's like, hey, come work for us and we'll give you healthcare. And it used to not be the case until World War II. And that's something that just lingered. So if you separated healthcare from
closing mental institutes down, like, well, we have all these private ones now, so we don't need the public ones anymore. And then they go, oh, wait, the private ones are all a fucking nightmare. Or vice versa, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's
all the private ones because the government took over, and then you find out the government's just lobotomizing in mass.
Right. They're chained up to radiators. And there's all of these things that just make it right because the insurance company, like you as the customer, like, so when you go to the hospital, I go to the hospital, I'm not the customer. The hospital or the doctor is the customer of the insurance company. And so they're negotiating on my behalf. It's like I'm not even the direct end user of it. I'm this weird cog in the middle of it because essentially like I'm just a pawn being used between healthcare providers and insurance payers. And maybe if you separate it, right, if the average person could deduct their medical expenses and their medical premiums the way that companies do, maybe that gives you more direct access to bargain on behalf of yourself with insurance companies. I don't know the solution, but I know that there's 50 million layers of red tape, and it makes it such a weird, hard system to navigate. Like, I think it's very easy to just go CEO bad and want to do something about it. And I don't know. It's like, I'm certainly not smart enough to try to solve healthcare in this country, but I do know that we spend way more per capita and our life expectancy is decreasing. It's like there's like, it's not all great.
Yeah, but like that statistic is one of those that people say a lot. We also spend way more per capita on gasoline than Europeans. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We're just richer. We have more money, so we spend money on
Also
stuff that
fair.
they just don't.
Totally fair. And I know that Canadians, when they want procedures quickly, they leave Canada and they come to the United States. There's a large medical migration industry on the northern part of the United States, because Canadians, which 90% of them live within 100 miles of the border, come to America when they need anything done. So you're right, that's fair.
Yeah, and there are a lot of like weird end of life treatments that we spend a lot of money on that other countries just don't spend
It's
money
true.
on, and they don't really extend life. You can try and like give proton therapy to someone who's got late stage leukemia, and they get an extra 3 months out of it, but the actual dollar cost out of it is just awful. And like, I'm not trying to turn into like a what's the rate of return for a grandma seeing her kid graduate, but that stuff gets baked into these statistics as well.
Totally fair.
And,
I mean, 80% of somebody's medical expenses are spent in their last year of life, and it usually is to just prolong the inevitable. That's a good point. Well taken, sir.
Yeah, it is. And when the real manifesto got leaked, that was one of the things he put in there is like, we spend the most per capita, but we're like 42nd per capita in outcomes. And it's like, you hate to see it. You wanted the guy to like not be retarded, but like, you finally get the real manifesto, and it's just like, damn, bro. And like the worst part was it was 2 paragraphs. Everyone kept calling it a manifesto, and I'm screaming.
That's not a manifesto.
Exactly, dude.
A manifesto is Uncle Ted, and the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for society.
Exactly.
That is a manifesto.
We've gotten precisely 2 manifestos.
Hey, my premiums are too high over here. I don't care that he was valedictorian of his prep school. I heard Italian. I'm just going to make him an idiot.
Oh, go, man, go for it. But yeah, it's just Elliot Rodger and then the Christchurch shooter in New Zealand. They put out like a couple thousand words. Elliot Rodgers was formatted. It was like 40 fucking pages. That's a manifesto. Props. I get it. I read it. I'm like, damn, okay, manifesto. Christchurch guy. He put out like 5,000 words about like immigrants and whatnot. And like, props. Manifesto. It was like a 30-minute read. It's like if you're taking the time to really like, vet his points and whatnot. Everybody else, it's like they use the word manifesto for everything. He had 2 paragraphs written on 2 pieces of paper. It was a 3-minute read, and I was mad halfway through. Like the tranny who shot up the school or whatever of kids, people were calling it a manifesto for like a whole fucking year, and I was very mad the whole time because it's not a manifesto. You look at someone and you're just like, that's not a writer. Come on. And like it actually was just like her or his or whatever's diary that they'd just been writing in. It was disjointed thoughts. And like when he or she was writing, they weren't thinking this is my manifesto. They're like, I'm just writing in my journal this evening how I feel. And then, we're so manifesto baited that we're just like, they wrote something down. It's a manifesto. Come on, release their private diary.
There were a couple different articles I was reading, and every one of them, like, you just get the ick from how sensationalized they're trying to make every single word in their stupid article. Like it's maybe a little bit that reflection of like us firing all the high level journalists over the last 10 years and just putting in college graduates that are 25 years old. But there's just like the writing's so stupid, but maybe that's part of this manifesto thing too, that just once they find anything, the buzzword is manifesto. So if you have a piece of paper with some scribblings on it, manifesto is the word that's going to come out of the media because that's a fun word and it gets clicks. Because when I see manifesto, I'm trying to read that thing. I think that's interesting.
Honestly, yeah, me too, dude. Elliot Rodger trained me, dude. Like that shit was just, it was good. It was a good read. If y'all haven't read it, it's interesting. It's fascinating. You get to read about his entire life. His mad at his birth parents. He was mad at his stepmom. She didn't care. He almost drowned in a pool once while they're having a party when he was 3. Like all these like memories that are coming out, they're all like directed at women. It's kind of like, damn, dude. Okay. And like I wasn't really vibing with it, but there were a lot of details behind it. It was an engaging read at the very least, where you got into his head and understand why he felt the way he did, even if like what he did was kind of retarded. Like he just rolled up and shot some random people on the street. Like it just. But still,
that guy looks like he's been laid before. I think I'll put a bullet in him.
yeah, that was probably the thought process.
The litmus test. that guy fucks. He's going.
He dies today. He has way too big of a smile on his face for a middle-aged man. I'm tired of you.
Bruh. But the news cycle that the media got out of Elliot Rodger lasted a while, didn't it? I feel like it was several months, 4, 5, 6 months.
Wait, which one was he?
He was the dude in Santa Barbara who was the supreme gentleman in the BMW who shot a bunch of people. He was trying to get revenge at the Stacys because no one would fuck with him. Or no one would fuck him, sorry. He was like the first incel shooter that we were aware of, I think. And that might have been like 2013, 2014. I don't even remember when this was. It's been a long time.
He definitely makes the rounds on like any incel-ish, incel adjacent talk boards you find out there. Like you'll find some references to him of the saddest amongst our male population that hold him as a hero.
Oh, absolutely. He's the supreme gentleman. Yeah, it was 2014 in Isla Vista, California. Those are his words, not mine. I am repeating them.
He does. I don't remember everything from the manifesto, but everything I gathered from him did feel like a fedora wearing guy who would refer to himself as a supreme gentleman. Like he had a lot of that incel stink on
him. He very much was. And like he was just kind of mad. He not inherited money, but his parents were rich, so he just had a bunch of rich guy stuff. So like he thought women would sleep with him because he had like an M3, or not an M3, sorry, it was a BMW convertible, 3 Series convertible. It was like a new one at the time. And he was like, they still won't sleep with me. Something must be wrong. I have to get revenge. Like it was just kind of.
It is wild to like go off the rails like that on the misconception that women sleep with you because of the things you have and not because of the disdain they have for their fathers, you know?
Absolutely. He just he was mad because he was like half Asian too, and so he like viewed his dad as fetishizing Asian women, and they wouldn't sleep with Asians. They wanted to sleep with white people, but he got the Asian genes, and so he was
damn Negroes.
I thought that kid looked quite Caucasian myself.
Poison in the wombs of our great country.
He probably looks Caucasian to a Caucasian, but I think to the Asian women he wanted to sleep with, they could probably see that he was half and half. And
he was getting shut down by the Asian women. You know what?
No,
that would drive
that's what
me
he
insane.
blamed it on, but you have no idea like what was actually going on. Like we got a very stilted perspective from him, I would say, as far as what was happening. From the way he talked, I get the feeling that he couldn't have a good conversation with anybody for more than like 3 minutes without them wanting to walk away, and that was probably like the main driver of his failures. But he did put out a fucking long ass manifesto, and it was a good read, and they got a whole media sensation out of it. They basically created the concept of the killer incel, whereas before the incel was just kind of like a weirdo on the internet. And then, that one Canadian dude drove into like a crowd of 3 people. He was the second incel killer, and so people are like, oh, we got copycats now, which is the thing here, because we got like a CEO shooter.
Elliot too, though.
I don't remember.
Like gave credit to Elliot. I think there was at least one where there was a copycat, may not be the right word, but there was somebody kicking back credit to it. Like, this is just
inspired by.
Let's see.
When incels became dangerous and not just some fiction on the internet.
Yeah, I was completely inspired by how little pussy that guy got. It really drove me to want to kill people too.
Yeah, I have no idea if he did, but in a quick Google, I'm finding that in 2018, when the Canada dude ran into the crowd and killed 11 people and called himself an incel, the media wrote about Elliot Rodger again. So I'm finding a bunch of stories referencing Rodger in 2018 and 2019 about the man attack. So they got a lot of mileage out of like, talking about incels being radicalized. And so, I'm sure there were probably people who wanted to copycat just based on like the mileage they were getting. Like we were going to get a copycat CEO killer, but sorry.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, which we already got the answer for. But now you got me going on CEO copycat killers. What were we just talking about? I had something.
Incel van killer. Media, they got a lot of mileage out of it.
I don't recall. I guess we'll move on.
Fair enough.
I got so excited talking about copycat killers with this the CEO guy. But that is interesting with how much heat this has under it. And obviously, Kiefer feels like we're going to see copycats. I tend to be of the same ilk. I mean, this is something that's not going to just get swept under the rug here, right? I mean, this feels like part of a larger movement, or at least a lot of people kind of waking up to the idea that, like, oh, especially when you see things like Blue Cross Blue Shield had just announced that they were going to cap anesthesia, like basically the day before this happened, and then pretty shortly after it happened said, we're gonna rethink that policy, actually.
Right. Our very
It's like,
unpopular
did you guys see where
policy.
UT threw the water bottles on the field this year and got the play called back?
No,
I did not see that.
There was a play, I can't even remember what game it was now, but Texas had, and it helped that it was the right call. There was some call that they got completely wrong, and they didn't go to a review. They go to the next play, and the UT fans throw a fit, and they throw garbage on the field to the point where they have to stop the game. And they scream, and they riot, and they pick up all the water bottles. And then the referees, without video review, decide to reverse the call, which is not supposed to happen according to the rules of college football.
Oh.
So even though it was the right call, and everybody kind of in unison was like, okay, they did eventually get the right call. That should have been what the call was. It was an unprecedented move to do it without any kind of review process, and just to kind of like kowtow to the crowd.
Well, they're about to riot. So,
and so what happened for the rest of college football this season is every time a football team didn't like the calls, they pelted the field with garbage because UT got a call reversed. So in kind of that same way, where now we see some regulation through violence, it might actually not be the right decision for these CEOs to start regulating what they do through violence, because then you're encouraging violence does in fact solve some of these problems. And I, as a libertarian, am all for the idea that we can solve our healthcare crisis with unregulated gun violence.
I think this is a tough one too, and the anesthesia thing is like a really great example of this, because like what was going on was like the insurance companies were in a debate with anesthesiologists about like what is like the actual proper way to bill for the time of being an anesthesiologist, because they were encountering fraud where essentially anesthesiologists were overbilling for it. And not all of them were. But
the old one for you, one for me.
That's he like hits it and like puts the mask back on, and
he's like, "Oh man, there's some good stuff. You're not gonna feel a thing."
Count to 10.
But it's a tough one, because there's a lot of things that happen there. Like the anesthesiologist is one, they're working, so they put you under, they're monitoring you the whole time, and then they're waking you up. And, you could make an argument that there's hours that they're working the entire time they're sitting there. And so, they could either bill by hour, they could bill by task, where, you bill at a fixed price. So you bill for putting them on, you bill for taking them off. But I don't remember the full details of it, but apparently there were some anesthesiologists that were taking advantage of the billing structure of like the hours that you would actually bill for the anesthesia and overbilling. And so they were in a negotiation where they're trying to get them like on a fixed cost for anesthesia. They couldn't do that. Then they were like, well, can we negotiate time limits? And like, they're in the middle of this negotiation, dude gets shot. And like, the story is like, oh, they were trying to cut off patients' anesthesia during service. And that's really not what was going on. Like, they're in the middle of a negotiation. Like the actual end result was they're trying to minimize fraud, but like,
it doesn't have to be true or not. When you see a CEO get popped, you go, let's nip this one in the bud.
We look at it and we're cheering on because we think like the demon is getting shot, but like instead it's just this weird little like nuanced swamp that we're in, and we take our foot out of like one thing of quicksand. We're like, it's free, and then we put it down somewhere else and it's more quicksand, but we're just happy to be out of the other bit we were in. And until we're thigh deep, we're not going to realize that it was a mistake. And I think that's what's going to happen. Take that.
Does that make you sing faster as you shoot it? It's like, no.
I think if anything, from a scientific perspective, even though it'd be minuscule, adding volume to the quicksand would temporarily raise you from the quicksand, I think. So the question is not, will it release you, but how many bullets do you need?
I would say probably no. Wouldn't it make you sink faster though? Because you're displacing that volume, which allows you to
quicksand physiology.
Actually,
I've got my PhD in quicksandology.
I enjoyed every second of the program. I will say, not a lot of job opportunities.
Camus once suddenly said, "You must imagine Sisyphus sinking."
And imagine he's happy. Yeah, that's. I didn't realize that was the anesthesia policy that they reversed, because that took such a backseat to everything else in my mind. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I guess there's this controversial thing, and I couldn't even be bothered to look into it. I was just like, oh, okay, cool. They're reversing this thing I don't know anything about.
Yeah, and I didn't look into it either. I listened to a friend who works in the industry, and like I just trusted them implicitly because they were just telling me there's more to it. Whenever anyone says like, "Oh, it's actually deeper," I almost will always believe what they're telling me. But it's one of those things because like the insurance company is supposed to be negotiating on behalf of the patient, right? So like, why would you, as the patient, want to get mad at the insurance company? They're supposed to be working for you, and anything they do where they're trying to negotiate your bill down is supposed to be for your benefit.
Right.
And all insurance is really trying to say is like, hey, we don't want to pay that much for anesthesia. And the anesthesiologists are like, oh, well, we're just going to wake people up early. And who is the demon here? Who are we picking as the demon? The anesthesiologist who's like, well, they won't let me bill anymore, so you got to wake up. We'll finish closing the knee up in a little bit. Just sit tight. Like,
hang tight with this excruciating pain.
I feel like we and like I don't even want to say the anesthesiologist is the villain here because like they're also responding to like a weird set of incentives, but like it's so easy for us to pick villains in situations when it like there clearly should be like a differentiation here, but like the insurance companies suck so bad that nobody wants to just be on their side because like for the most part, like people get billed insane amounts, like $1,000 a month or more, whether they're using their insurance or not. It seems a little insane. Doesn't really make much sense. Especially like I said, my experience, I show up and it's like, what do you mean I can ask for a cheaper price if I just tell it? Like, okay, the dumb thing at the pharmacy, there's like cheap insurance prices that you can get for drugs. You don't have insurance, the drug has like a crazy price. But if I open a website and show them like, hey, Good RX says it's actually $17, the pharmacist is like, oh, you're right. And they just type in 17 and give it to me? What the fuck is the insurance doing? All I have to do is show them a magic spell and they give me like the cheap price. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, why am I paying thousands of dollars a month for a family, especially? Like the whole market is retarded.
And I think somebody should take advantage of a false site like a Good RX mirroring site that just makes everything insurmountably cheap. I actually do get a pound of lidocaine for 75 cents. That's what this says.
Well, you could make goodrx.co instead of .com and then just like copy the exact website and then just divide all the prices by like 10. So everything is 10 times cheaper. And like, well, look, goodrx.uk.gov says this is actually -$3. So
you owe me. So can I have the drugs? And I'll take $3 out of your register, sir.
And maybe that shit would work too. I don't know. Like they've never like credibly checked. And like even too, like if I forget to do the GoodRx thing before I show up, sometimes the pharmacist will be like, "Oh, hey, I can look that up for you on GoodRx and give you the GoodRx price." And it's like, dude, just write that price on the label then. What are you even doing? Is this just a
waiting to get a better payout from some insurance company? You know what I mean?
I guess, man. Like the whole thing is just like a weird nest of like Venus flytraps.
A little bit of an employee satisfaction game where they just like turn off the Wi-Fi if you're being an asshole. Like, yeah, hold up, dude. Show it to me. I'd love to give you a cheaper price, you fucking dick.
It's certainly possible, man. And like, I don't know what to think, but it's like a market that is totally divorced from prices at every step of the way. And there's no consumer choice and there's no real choice at any level. And the whole thing's retarded.
That is the odd disconnect in there. Is like you have these two different entities that are using your health crisis as a way to try to cheat the system to make more money off the other guy. It's doctors trying to like strum up the price of your care or give you an extra treatment that will be covered by your insurance. And in their head, it's like, I'm not hurting this individual. I'm taking it out on this dystopian insurance company. And the same way the insurance company is like, look, we're trying to make money and protect people and give them insurance for these terrible health events that happen. And we're getting nickel and dimed by this goddamn hospital along the way. And it almost comes down to like, we've found this system of insurance that just in case you have something terrible happen, you can afford it if you have insurance. So it's this great idea. But in the meantime, we've made it so unbelievably expensive to have any small thing done because insurance is in the way of that, where it's almost like, would this all just be cheap if we just took insurance out of the equation? Like, sure, you would have to find some kind of crowdsourcing
or restructured insurance.
Or yeah, you would need to, get a hold of if you have one of the terrible things that does require some terribly expensive treatment, then yeah, now all of a sudden you have to crowdsource it or look within the good hearts of the people on the internet to what do you call the crowdfunding site that's out there? GoFundMe for these people. And like that's a bad, but is it better? Are we saving more money as a whole when every time we go to get crutches, we have to spend $500 because we rolled an ankle somewhere?
That's a really good point.
And that is what crowd health is actually about. It's literally just crowdfunding all of the payments and then just having a few people negotiating on behalf of everyone who's paying in.
This episode of Against the Mob is brought to you by Crowd Health.
Oh, did I wish? And my friend just signed up. He has like a $250 affiliate link. So everybody who uses his link to sign up, they both get $250. Like it'd be the perfect little fit in here.
That's right. Brought to you by Crowd Health. That's crowdhealth.com.
You guys are gonna get on the next one here.
Right. But there is kind of like an even more like fucked up incentive structure that's happened. So like since like the late 2000s, a lot of venture capital started buying hospitals because like as people realize they could financialize things and sell them, like, you sell everything. And so you have like hospital administrators who work for like investors and like capital funds that are trying to get a profit out of it. And, ACA comes out, you got the Affordable Care Act that allows hospitals just kind of like make up prices because like insurance companies were suddenly not able to deny coverage or deny payments for certain things that they previously could. And like as we moved away from a free market, financial entities realized they could buy a hospital and then they could become the billing system. And then they look at the doctor and like, doctor pay in like a lot of ways has not moved or has gone down since like the ACA in the US, especially compared to inflation. And a lot of that's just because like you have like hospital admins who have stepped in and bought the whole place and they're just kind of like, they're acting in like a weird way, like you go to the barber shop and the barber cuts hair and you grow like just enough hair every month for them to cut the hair off. And like suddenly like imagine a financial company buys your barber shop and is like cutting your hair below the scalp and they're just cutting your head off eventually. And they're like, look, it's better this way. We got so much more hair out of you. And it's like, that's kind of like what they're doing with the hospitals in a similar sense. They're shaving like below the hairline is in the healthcare industry. They're almost like taking everything out. And so like you have a doctor who might be on call and they used to get $200 a night to be on call back in like 2004. At $200 a night to be on call is pretty decent. You're not actually doing too much work. You're answering the phone and you're interrupting your sleep schedule. Kind of sucks, but it's good money. Being on call as a doctor now, I think it's like $120 a night. And that's like 20 years later. Like it's gone down to the point where it doesn't make sense anymore. And like, obviously this changes at different hospitals, but like there are certainly hospitals where you can go to where they've been bought out by financial agencies that are trying to make things better that have just fucked things up. And they're running like weird KPIs. They're asking patients, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the hospital food? Because like the CEO read some stupid story in the New Yorker about how patients hate hospital food. Meanwhile, there's like other like major things that are happening in the hospital that they should be addressing. Just because they're like financializing all these weird KPIs and like none of it makes any fucking sense. At like every level, you have these weird demons sucking money out of you. And
it's kind of the way everything works. I mean, it's everything getting funneled up to the same, which is kind of what I was bringing up earlier of like, I would make the argument that we could solve this with free markets, but in lieu of having free markets and the markets deciding prices and setting incentives like that, like, there has to be some kind of interruption into the system that we have now where morality comes into consideration for these large corporations. Otherwise, you're going to continuously have bean counters who have shit tons of money come in and buy different areas of corporations. And I've watched it sweep through the restaurant industry my entire life as a professional restaurateur, where like you have a successful idea in whatever type of corporate entity you are. And as you get larger, eventually the day comes where your private owner has the opportunity to make $40 million and walk off into the sunset. And it's hard to blame him for that. I would take that money. Absolutely. And go retire on it and start a different business if I really felt the need to do so. But what happens is now you are owned by people who've never worked in that industry. who don't have any incentive base other than money in front of them and don't look at anything but a profit and loss sheet when they're making these decisions. So you take the humanity completely out of it, and it's like, what is the disconnect there where we can add the humanity back into it? Gun violence is a at the moment.
And there's a way. And John Wayne pow.
It's totally fair.
I was thinking this one earlier too when y'all were talking about security detail. I was wondering, like, and maybe it's like a skit of a board meeting where they're having the discussion of like, we're hiring a lot of security. Would it just be more cost effective for us to stop fucking over the general public to an extent where they didn't want to murder our CEOs every weekend?
And they're like, nah, everyone's all quiet. And then they go, what are you kidding me? It's like, or they throw them out the window. Like that.
That's
I can think of the perfect idea at the board meeting, though. You know, it's like, do we lower costs? No. Do we give people transparent billing? No. Let's put a black person in a commercial with a white woman at Pepsi. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here to let you know we hear you. And then they show a black guy with a Molotov cocktail, and like an Aetna employee walks over, takes the cocktail, hands him a Pepsi bottle, label side out, and they both drink together.
He actually drinks the Molotov cocktail.
Oh shit.
And he falls in. That's pretty accurate. I think that's about how that commercial, because that's how I feel like a lot of people view these corporations. You know, as a BP does. You know, they spill a bunch of oil and then they go, "We're sorry." Like that's how that South Park episode. Yeah, I wonder too how much like what type of blowback or progress, I don't know what the right word is, because it could either get better or worse. And what?
I just had like the worst idea ever. Like,
okay,
what if you just exclusively hired trans CEOs, and then it's like, are you going to shoot our CEO? Are you a bigot?
Are you a bigot? What are you going to do? Are you going to shoot me, transphobe?
Our CEO is a woman. What are you going to do next? Or is she identifying as a man?
It's actually pretty, it's like if you really wanted to play on to that woke card, it's not a bad one. It's just call everybody's bigot bluff, It's like, are you really gonna hit a woman who thinks he's a man?
We just realized that the corporation is much harder to track down our CEOs when they can use any bathroom available.
Oh, that's great.
Like a ghost in the night.
Are you going to shoot a trans black woman?
And also this probably speaks to society, is there's probably like a portion of people that would never think about assassinating a CEO unless they're like a trans black person. they're like, oh, goddamn right I am. Not my
that devil CEO, yeah, I did shoot it.
It's not my bathroom. Can't watching my daughter pee.
But I'm so sorry, man. I didn't mean to derail. You were trying to
make a
point.
That's okay.
You had some non-trans related point, I'm sure.
Yeah, I did. I wonder what like the legislative backlash or progress will be. Is Congress going to sit down in this next session, actually look at it? Are they going to try to make it better, or is this something that's just nothing changes and we just keep on going the same way? I mean, it is interesting, as we were looking up before, though, that United Healthcare, their market cap has dropped significantly. I'm curious, have any other major insurance companies, have their market caps dropped?
Let's see.
What are some other ones? Blue Cross Blue Shield
right now.
All right, I'll pull up Blue Cross Blue Shield.
All right. Let's see. Wow, investing.com fucking blows. It just froze.
Nice.
Okay, I'm going to go somewhere else. It froze, but the pop-up loaded. Jesus Christ. Like these are people who should be shot. You know, websites used to be cool and simple HTML, it loaded right away. Now it loads and everything's there, and then like some fucking JavaScript loads like 30 seconds late and rearranges the whole website. Fucking pop-up. Do you want to allow notifications? No. I want to shoot every single person involved in this fucking
Oh,
website.
sorry, Bloomberg's going to deny my access. I guess I'll just look on my phone. Jeez.
Looks like there's a lot about healthcare stock falling as lawmakers push to break down drug middlemen. So we might be seeing some externalities in our drops in the market anyway.
We did talk about that before the call. I totally forgot. Yeah. So like first day, most of the stocks were unaffected, but then the initial conversation was about them looking closer at this industry for more regulation. So they're definitely not going to solve the problem. But yeah, a lot of stocks went down because United Health was down, I think, $70, which is like 11% in the last 5 days, which is quite a lot because like market cap wise, I think we discussed that was near $100 billion in loss. And a lot of that was probably from the discussion about Congress. And what the fuck? This website blows. I'm leaving. Yahoo Finance.
Yeah. Yep. It does seem that there's kind of like a general drop. And so whether Congress actually does something about it versus just kind of the market is scared that they might, because the gravy train might, it's not going to leave the station. It just might go to a different platform. It's still going to be a very lucrative industry, but it is interesting. I'm just curious to see. And if that is the case, then I think we're going to see copycat killers, period. But if, let's say in this hypothetical that all of a sudden Congress comes out, makes some sort of like meaningful legislation, I have no idea what that would look like. But in this legislation, all of a sudden, like healthcare is better for many more Americans and it's cheaper. That now target CEOs specifically because they want Congress to step in and legislate people. So it's like, so now you start to see like, hey, we don't like the banking industry. So now you have a wave of like bank CEOs that are targeted, or like, oh, we don't like this particular industry.
Reason to make this an anti-Semitic argument.
Why are all the CEOs Jewish?
Oh man, I don't know why you guys are trying to paint me as a fucking anti-Semite tonight.
It's interesting. We're definitely gonna get copycat killers no matter what.
Touch up.
Wait, what?
I don't know if painting is the right acronym. Maybe a touch up.
Adding a happy little tree.
We're just gonna add a little anti-Semitism here.
We're just gonna put a happy little nose right here.
I was gonna say happy little concentration camp, but anyways,
swastika.
Anyways, what were you saying, Flirt?
I fucking forgot, man. I think there's going to be copycat killers no matter what, regardless of if people view this as effective or not. Just from like the folk hero nature of this, like
right, just how popular it is.
Absolutely, it's like way too popular, and I think, and like here's the other thing too. When you look at what's going on with like the millennial generation, and then Gen Z and Gen Alpha and Gen Beta after that, most people who commit significant acts of violence are people who don't have families, they don't have children, they don't have like other people who are looking at them for responsibilities. And like, when we start talking about like birth rate discourse, and like one of the large issues is just there's a lot of incels, for better or for worse, and like they are actually a source of like antisocial violence. And we've kind of created this weird little petri dish where we're growing a bunch of happy little incels. And unfortunately, I think that is the thing that actually is the real cause of violence. Like all the other like societal things we talk about, like my insurance premiums have tripled, blah, 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 blah. They're not real actual drivers of violence. Like this guy was single, his parents were wealthy. This didn't have anything to do with money for him. And like he had a decent job. He was probably making six figures. And like, to be honest, his back issue, not solvable with money. There's nothing money could have done for it. As far as I'm aware, anyways. Maybe there's some secret thing that the hyper-billionaires have that we just don't have. But like, I don't think the insurance company really had anything to do with him at all. money wise. I think he just tired of living. That's
Wouldn't
really
go out
it.
with the bank.
Maybe so.
You know, this reminded me of one of my favorite arguments that I don't think I've ever presented to you. I know Matt's heard this one for sure throughout the years. But is the solution to solving the incel issue and the like mass shooting problem in this country in large part, if you can attribute it to that, can we solve that by legalizing prostitution?
Here's your better yet.
No.
Would you be willing, if it could though, would you be willing, would you be okay with your taxes going to like state subsidies for prostitutes so that they can bang incels?
In my very limited interaction with prostitutes, it doesn't seem like there is much of a need to include a state incentive program. It seems like they're pretty prevalent already.
Well, I'm just saying, like, what if they were with their act, like the payment was being subsidized?
So I would subsidize prostitutes, but not for incels, because like I don't think it would solve the problem. I
But
would
not for them.
subsidize. Yeah, I would subsidize prostitutes for people who are like, you're paraplegic, your legs don't work, you're in a wheelchair, because I think it's the right thing to do. Those dudes need some form of
include a voucher for like, and I don't know exactly how you measure this. Maybe you just have a governmental official in a room and you walk in, and if you're like ugly enough, they just like, oh God, yeah, absolutely, dude. Here's your doctor's note.
Present this at the brothel. It's all good. This one's on us.
Considering the way people made up all sorts of stuff to get prescriptions for medical marijuana, is like, yeah, I'm having trouble sleeping. Imagine the hoops people would jump through. They'd like fall out of bed on accident, like, damn, I hit my head on the fucking bedside dresser drawer. It's time for me to go to the doctor now. And it's like, yeah, no, my face is always like this. That shit
go into your weekly therapist appointment just to tell your psychiatrist about how you're thinking about shooting up a school because you don't get laid enough in hopes that you find
I hope you get a referral. He's like,
all
okay,
right, here. Script. I've been waiting so long.
Just dancing on the line of like prescription, not getting red flagged.
Right. It's for sure. Why don't you think that it would solve? Why don't you think it would solve it? Do you think it's such an ingenuine interaction?
I think it would just right.
That you think at the end of the day, it's like a craving.
Free range.
So there's a certain portion of the population who are like genuinely addicted to sex and they need it to actually feel better about themselves. But I think for the vast majority of people, like what you really want is like the actual intimacy and connection. Like that's where most of the juice is, where sex is concerned. It's having someone know about you, care about you. It's feeling comfortable going next to them. It's not having to worry about performance and like how you happen to be looking in a certain light. It's not sucking in or wearing your silky pajamas. I have silky pajamas, or wearing your like old, like kind of crusty, like these are my gym shorts from 8th grade pajamas. It's like getting to be comfortable with someone in all aspects of who you are. And that's really what the incel actually wants. And that's what we all want out of sex for the most part. And, if I pay an incel to go to a prostitute once a week, it's not solving that problem. It might exacerbate
it might actually make it worse. That's a really good point.
That's interesting that what we really want out of sex is that intimacy until we've reached enough status and money that then you want to have that intimacy with as many women as you can throughout your life as quick succession as possible.
Once you've acquired like intimacy from one woman, then you as a man, if you're not farsighted enough, will start to think like, oh, hey, that problem's solved. I don't need to worry about it anymore. Let's just go out and bone, man. Like that's the next thing you do with your brain. Unless you're actually really thinking long term.
Why would money make all of these guys suddenly go out and have sex with all these women? we have no idea what's causing this sex addiction. Sexa, woohoo.
There's the other temptation too, because like as a man, you're never more attractive to a lot of women until you're taken. So
it's weird how they can smell that on you.
Oh, absolutely. I personally have a belief that you have to lose your virginity at least once a week, otherwise everybody knows. It grows back. It absolutely does grow back.
It grows back. It grows back.
Mine's about halfway grown in. I'm due for one myself.
Oh, you do, dude. You do.
That's funny.
You post this tonight to have my wife listen to this in the morning.
It grows back. That's so funny, dude. Jeez, that's amazing. Your
My
virginity
bro hymen's
grows.
coming back in. It's been a week.
Oh, it is, dude. But I genuinely think that there's something women are keyed into that we just don't see as men, where like they can just kind of tell if your needs are being met and you're fulfilled. And I think there's just a certain way in which we interact with women when like it's not like they can smell the juice on your fingers, but like they're smelling something. Something is just it's waving off of you, man. I also this is weird too. I used to believe that even like through text they could tell, like, oh, I'm texting like a virgin. It's been a little while, which is silly because like there was a time when I do things like my phone automatically capitalizes the first letter whenever I send a message, but I was like, damn, that looks desperate. So I'd go back and delete it and then lowercase it and put it in there.
I like how you put more effort into looking like you put less.
Like I don't care.
Like the bedhead hairstyle trend for a while. You like get up for 3 hours before work to make sure your hair looks like shit before you get there.
It's the equivalent of that, man.
They toxic king.
You're not wrong. I mean, there is like I've come across like episodes of potential ESP where like you're talking to a new girl and the girl who's been blowing you off for months all of a sudden texts you out of the blue. It's like, how did you even know that I was finally talking to another woman?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Like the only time your ex will ever call you is when you're about to get over her. But it's when we talk about, and I'll bring it back like on topic, when we talk about like the incel problem is like they're kind of missing all of this. And like it's one of the things that makes you want to shoot a CEO if you're not thinking about someone actually caring about you and needing you and wanting you back home. Like even just having a girlfriend who cares about you and is going to be there for you, it changes your risk analysis. And that's why, like, if you ask any father if they would go shoot someone they had a grudge with, I think almost all of them would answer like, the only people I have grudges with now are people who have grudges with my children. And, they're not going to go out and shoot a CEO because then their child is going to be fatherless. But if you ask them about like child trafficking or whatnot, those are the people who are their only targets at that point, which is like rational. I think that's where men go once they've settled down into a family. They're not like thinking about revolution anymore. And people talk about the Revolutionary War and they're always shocked at how young all of the founding fathers were. And it's like, well, no shit. Who else is going to actually go fucking do that?
Because everyone that's like settled down and well off, they're like, I don't care. Call it America, call it England. I don't really. It's like, call it what you want. I'm fine.
Yeah, they might have been like, hey, look, dude, I'll make some bullets for y'all. I got a little forge at home. I'm down with the cause, but they're not frontline men, and for good reason, of course. They have people who depend on them.
I imagine the older you get and the more you've watched governments interact with their peoples, the more you kind of get to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm sure you're going to create this awesome government that doesn't interfere in my life. Or maybe I'll just farm this land and who gives a shit who my government is at the end of this war.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when you look at like demographics of murders, you'll find there's this weird bump in men when they're like in their 60s and 70s. And it's like, wait, why are they killing people again? It's like, oh, their kids are self-sufficient now. Now you can have grudges again.
Maybe it's time for me to pick that hobby back up.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll see some like weird shooters where it's like some 70-year-old dude, like the dude in Panama who shot like a protester. That guy got famous for a little while because there's the video clip of him, and it's just like a full-on, like you got a full frontal of the guy, just no sympathy whatsoever, just bam. And like, why'd they shoot him? Like, oh, some guy was blocking traffic. Like that is incel vibes, and that is my kids are grown vibes. That is not like my kids are in elementary school vibes. And like I think that's the biggest societal problem when we talk about like copycat killers and what's coming in our future. Nobody cares about the math or the legislation or the politics of it. Like we don't. Like Americans, we do not give a fuck about even like the most important things going on in our lives. But like if you don't have kids, maybe I'll go shoot a CEO next year. And I think not me personally, but I'm just saying like that. That's
just to flag that, just to make sure.
The NSA didn't take that one the wrong way. These are jokes. This is satirical.
We got two good clips out of this. We got Matt like, maybe Hitler was a good thing or whatever the fuck he said. And now we got me. Maybe I'll shoot a CEO next year. So we'll see.
This episode is brought to you by Hilton, Midtown Manhattan. Do you have a CEO that you need to kill? Come stay at the Hilton.
So we all kind of think that copycats is more likely than not. I'm a big stand-up comedy fan. I don't know exactly how much you guys consume of it, but I hear a lot of comedians talk about like tough follows, like when somebody's an absolute killer on stage and they go up there and just flatten the room. It's really hard to get up there and then like restart that energy. You know where I'm going with this? Do you guys think that we see a little bit of a stave off of the next copycat because of how handsome this son of a bitch was?
The bar is pretty high, to be fair.
I'm just trying to imagine a shooter sitting there. It's like, damn, I got to go to the gym first.
I want to shoot a CEO, but I'm not following that guy. He looks so cute.
Yeah, or it's like, I'll do this in 2 years after I get my shit together. You know, it's like this mission to get your life together so you're an attractive person. When they start digging into it, it's like, oh, he's a self-made man and all this stuff, and it's like, now I can do this finally. It's
somewhere in American history books, and a generation from now, there'll be a whole section on the sexiest assassination strings in the history of mankind.
Oh, dude, the way that like online media is just descending into utter trash, there will be a Vice article in the near future of how like most handsome killers of all time, or we're gonna get that utter garbage.
Yeah, we got a new number one.
I feel like we've already over here this though. Because wasn't there like a bit of conversation about Gavrilo Princip, or however you say his name? Because I heard he was attractive as well. But
he was before the Serbian police got a hold of him.
There was one of the younger female cousins in my family did that with the Bundy documentary, where she was kind of like in front of the family. It was like, he was like kind of cute though. And it's like, oh, you're not allowed to pick who you date anymore. You have to bring everybody home now. Like, you already knew he fucking killed 8 people, and you're still
you
like,
know this going into it that he's a mass murderer. It's just like, well, he is kind of cute though.
Your sexual preference catalog is that off? Like, god damn. I need to shake hands with that dude before he takes you on the first date.
I think that it is a tough act to follow. It's, you know, in the words of Shane Gillis, it's like, you know, your ex used to date a Navy SEAL. It's kind
of gay when you think about it. Kind of pussies, really.
Killing them in the dark.
I just pulled something up, just doing a quick Google search along these lines out of curiosity. I learned some interesting things about John Wilkes Booth that I did not know. You guys want to hear a quick little fact?
Share with class.
For people who don't know, this is the dude who shot Abraham Lincoln in the theater. And he was a rich, handsome, and extremely popular actor at the time, like theater actor. And apparently he decided to become assassin. And that must have been an impossible act to follow. Like, can you imagine a wealthy, handsome, I don't think he was tall. I think he was 5'7", though. That was like the one knock against him. But like a wealthy, handsome assassin goes and like drops the fucking president, the most powerful man in the country.
Pretty wild. They picked him up at a McDonald's too, if I remember right.
Yeah, they found him hiding out at the Lexington McDonald's. It was just right outside.
Yeah, it was the original McDonald's. It was still a farm back then.
E-I-E-I-O, motherfucker.
Oh, I thought he was staying at the Hilton. No, I'm pretty sure that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated outside the Hilton. When he jumped on stage after assassinating him, people actually thought that he was part of the play. And and he shot him in the balcony, and then he swings down, he breaks his leg while he's swinging down, and people like think he's part of the play, and he's just like hobbles off stage, and then it's like, oh my god, the president's dead. Like, huh, probably unrelated events.
You know, that one actor, he really sold the anxiety in that moment. He looked nervous. I mean, I've never seen acting like that, Marianne.
Besides that, how was the play, Miss Lincoln?
No, we get it. But other than that, how was the play? Just saying, you saw 2 of the 3 acts. You got a decent feel for it.
I think it would be pretty tough to follow him because also it's going to be really tough to be able to capture the imagination of America like that. It's going to be meticulously planned, and the
Maybe
copycats
also
are
similarly
they're
cheered
going
on
to
by the
fall
right wing in
flat.
America at the time.
What's that?
I said maybe another similarity between the 2 of them, both cheered on by the right wing of our country.
Look, I'm just saying we shouldn't let them mix in society. All right, I paid a good price for these. Who's going to reimburse me?
Look, if we send them back, who's going to clean our toilets? I mean, pick our cotton.
I'm not saying that Booth was right, but I'm saying that he has opened up an important conversation for this country.
Look, Booth was a strict constitutionalist, all right?
Oh man, that is probably something that's going to bite us in the ass sooner rather than later. But Americans, we have become irreverent about everything. Like nothing is sacred, nothing is special, and while it does give us some fantastic gold, it's gonna the consequences of it probably won't be great in the long term, but for the short term, the ride's really entertaining. It's at least, and if this is the collapse of the Roman Empire just 2.0, at least we have Wi-Fi and memes. You know what I mean? It's like at least we'll have a good time as the ship goes down.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people had fun during the collapse of the Roman Empire. It was long, it was drawn out, it was slow, but after that, you got to have a cool medieval society as well, which is kind of interesting. Like,
you got to pay for your sins and get into heaven.
I'm fine with that. I mean, wouldn't you also like the idea that you could be rewarded with land if you just put on a suit of armor and killed a few people? Kind of cool. It's kind of cool.
There's not a dissimilar program to that with militaries these days. I mean, it's not land, it's like a Hellcat, but they'll get you a Mustang.
and education after.
Yeah.
You get your predatory loan, your Dodge Hellcat, a wife that's going to cheat on you, and some college when you get back, son.
It is an upgrade because the peasant levies of the past, they never got their own horses. Now you get like a horse in advance. Like literally best country on earth, hands down.
Never been an empire like it.
That's what's up. Well, you guys got anything else?
I got one last little factoid I thought was kind of interesting. I did come across a green Luigi, like Nintendo Luigi beanie on Amazon that sold over 100,000 pairs in the last couple days. Okay. So I do, in some small part, not to seem like a completely disheartened, cold-blooded satirist out here, but the Nintendo Luigi protests are going to be pretty hilarious.
Oh, they will, dude. And one thing about living in a capitalist society that's very interesting is you get to watch exactly how quick people are like figuring out when you can make money off of crisis. Because people, they went online, they figured out his exact clothing when he shot people, and his jacket, it's sold out everywhere. People have jacked up the prices for the jacket. They jacked up the prices for the backpack. Everybody is like, oh damn, and like the Luigi hats too. I mean, they figured out his name, and someone sat there and like just war gamed what was the perfect thing to actually like get made in China, like on a snap decision overnight. And it was the Luigi beanie, and whoever did that, fucking fantastic hero of capitalism.
Well played.
But
I like to think that some hobbyist knitter at home who makes Luigi beanies has so much work to do before Christmas.
After Trump gets in office, yes, that's exactly how it's going to work. There's going to be some lucky American doing the job. But right now, we still got to deal with Chinese factory workers pumping out shitters.
That's it's like good for Luigi though. He's been living in the shadow of Mario for far too long. It's his time in the sun, baby. This is the age of Luigi.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a good satirical video game T-shirt, though, like Luigi's Revenge, like a fake game that you come out with.
Oh fuck, dude! It probably already exists too. Like, I can't imagine someone hasn't come out with a merch for it.
Feels like something you could do in 5 minutes on AI once you get the right prompt in there.
Oh, 100%.
Luigi's
100%.
Revenge. It's like he's going after Mario. Like dude. This is how it's gonna go. It's gonna be Mario as the healthcare CEO, and Luigi's shooting him in the back, and then he goes and like kidnaps the princess. And she's like, "Where's Mario?" He's like, "I'm your Mario now, toots."
Luigi with a 3D printed gun and a back brace on.
Someone's probably going to do it, but you could make some great pixel art of, the levels in the Mario game where you're running and Bowser is at the end and he's throwing fireballs at you. You got to run across the bridge and jump over Bowser and land on the thing that opens the bridge so Bowser dies. Someone's going to do one where Mario's at the front and Bowser's there and Luigi's behind him with a gun pointing at Bowser. It's just going to be, it's the perfect clip. It's the perfect clip.
That's awesome.
And it's the world we live in, man. I'm going to embrace the descent, embrace the hellfire. There's a demon in control of a number of our industries, and it's winning. And, we're going to shoot the wrong people. I guarantee it.
No rosy messages at the end. It's just like, nope, we're going to get it wrong. The demons will still be in charge. The innocent will die. We'll put the wrong person up on the cross, and society will continue to descend into madness.
Absolutely. Some underfucked dude who just became a virgin again is going to shoot the wrong guy.
His virginity grew back. Dude, what?
Luigi. Why did you raise my premiums?
Oh, man. That's great. Logan, what you got?
That's all. Street screaming at prison guards and causing a ruckus. I'm sure we'll see a couple Waluigis in that crowd too.
I hope so. He's my favorite.
That's totally fair. Waluigi, dude. Yeah, there's so much to be capitalized, and as I said, nothing's reverent, so everything's fair game. Thanks for listening to Against the Mob podcast. We appreciate you guys being with us week in and week out. A special thanks to you, Mr. Flirtcheap. We always appreciate your time. Thanks for bullshitting and descending into the madness with us. It's good to know that like-minded people are in the shit of the swamp. At least it's fun. At least it's funny. We'll see you guys next week. Remember, we fight against the mob with people over politics.
Next year, I might shoot a CEO.